Hello. We just gotta take this off there and turn this on there. Hi. Hello. Hope you can hear me okay. Hopefully the music isn't too loud. And hopefully my thing isn't on delay by 5 minutes. Like it was yesterday. Hey Koopa, how's it going? Good to see ya. Hello Anna, text and letters. Nailed it. The music's an okay volume, right? It's not too overbearing over my voice. I hope not. Somebody let me know, because I can turn down the music more. Sound is good? I'm glad. Sounds good so far? Oh, it'll change. Can I get a shout out for the Angry Koopa as well? If you'd be so kind, really. So yeah, we're gonna read another. Thank you for the confirmations about the noise levels. I'm gonna read another 50 or so pages. And then after today, we should only have 5 streams of this left. Hype. Thank you for shouting out Koopa. He's a delightful fella who's going through the Crash Bandicoot series and the Banjo-Kazooie series. Alright, well, we might as well get started. Chapter 55. No exit. Did you hear the one about the fungus? It might need some time to grow on you. Graffiti seen at multiple points along I-95 corridor. September 7th, Echo Lake, Indiana. Matthew's left hand had swollen. It had blown up, red and angry, the color of a boiled lobster. Any sensation brought him pain. Anytime he moved it, anytime he brushed against it, something, anytime he even breathed on it, it was broken. He knew that much, and it would never heal right. Not as long as he was trapped here in this bunker. He had to do something. Otherwise, all he thought about was Autumn and Bo. His son lost without him. His wife passed on without him. Idly, he went through the same motions he had when he was first trapped here, roaming the space like a starving rat, looking for bolt holes he could squeeze himself through for escape, as if any of that would be easy, like he'd find a tunnel out behind a poster, or a secret door in the cement, or a phone that someone had dropped that he could use to call for help. Matthew had fantasies of being some MacGyver-like figure who would use the aglet at the end of his shoelace to somehow pick the lock on his manacle. Or maybe he would break apart the laptop and use the chemicals found on the screen to create a little bomb that blew open the hatch. Kaboom! Or when someone came down to check on him, he would spring himself upon them like a trained killer, wrapping his chain around their neck, pulling tighter and tighter until their tongue fell dead on their lips and their neck tendons pulled tight at toe cables. Tight as toe cables. Nailing this. He shuddered there in his cot, not because of the grotesque imagery, but because of how much he liked it, how much he wished for it. He wasn't a killer, he wasn't some MacGyver character, but he wanted to be, and he wanted to kill them all. That was a new sensation to him, this anger, this rage. It was madness. It wasn't God's light. It was fed for some greater darkness, but he could see nothing else now but those shadows within himself. Worse, he could see no God to guide him, no presence from above, only the illusion of one. An illusion he clung to like a drowning man grabbing hold of driftwood in order to keep his head above water. He moved in and out of sleep. His hand throbbed. Dreams and nightmares haunted his edges. None could he remember, but all of them left something on him, something grimy and foul. He woke gasping, sure that someone was on top of him, but he was alone. Alone, at least in this bunker. Above him he heard sounds, motion and movement, the rumblings of engines, the murmur of men yelling indistinctly, the gruff wah 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 of someone laughing, the banging of a truck gate, tires growling over loose stone. It was in all directions, above him, north of him, south of him, a lot of vehicles, a lot of men. But what did it mean? End of the extremely short chapter. Yay! Manual shout out for Riddy. She might not stream, fingers crossed for someday, but she is super awesome. Awesome in parkour. Thanks for shouting out Anna a second time. She deserves it. Reading hype. MacGyver is cool. And so much hype for reading. Words. Nailed it. MacGyver wouldn't kill them all, though. Explosions, but no guns. And lots of punching, but no to guns. Class for extremely short chapter. Thanks. Nailing it. And MacGyver might not use guns, but I'll use finger guns. Yeah. Alright. Always wave your hand because you heard it. Punching, but no guns. Or alcohol. No, no, no. Time to move on to the second chapter of the day, or the night, which is at least longer than the first one. Chapter 56, The Bridge. Rachel Maddow, let me ask you, Chris, before I begin, will there even be an election in November? Chris Hayes, the bigger question is, will there even be an America in November? From The Rachel Maddow Show, MSNBC, transcript from September 7th. September 8th, Klamath River Bridge, California. Benji breathed in deep. The air was clear. No burning smell. The river babbled its susurrus beneath the bridge. The walkers were about an hour out. He'd taken to scouting ahead, which brought him here to this bridge. He found a few car wrecks along the way, but nothing more severe than that. The bridge stretched out and back over the Klamath River. On each side were forested hills, the dark pines pointing toward the slate-gray sky. At each end of the bridge were two golden bears, statues mounted, guardians standing vigil over the bridge on both sides. Benji was sure that there was a story there, and so he decided to look it up, if only because he needed a distraction. His phone had service here, slow but able, and here a dark thought cut through his curiosity. If humankind dies, how long will our cell signal go on? Will the internet remain even as we cease to populate it? Will our satellites keep spinning up there, networks reaching out to a population that has long gone dead and rotten? He shook that off, opened his web browser, and discovered that, sure enough, there was a story about those golden bears. The bears, installed there in the 1950s, were not originally gold, it seemed. One morning, residents driving over the bridge found that the bears were painted gold. The highway patrol came and scrubbed the paint off with turpentine, but the next morning, what had happened? The bears were gold once again. This cycle repeated itself again and again, week in, week out. They'd remove the gold, and then the gold would return. They'd watch the bears, but soon as the patrolmen fell asleep or went on their way, the bears were once again a shining, burnished gold. Finally, they gave up, and the bears remained gold. Years later, it came out that it was nothing supernatural, nor was it the work of one person. Rather, it was the Golden Bear Club, a group of men and women who sought not only to clean up their town and perform secret favors for people, but also to paint those bears gold again and again and again. Their only rules were, there were no rules. Happy anarchy, delightful disobedience, making the world better for no reason except to do it. Benji liked that story. But it made him sad, too. It seemed to him suddenly that it was easy to dismiss people as ultimately a negative force, a terrible influence upon the world and upon one another. Evil lived in the world, wars and terror, torture and assault, but he also knew that statistically the worst among them were a small percentage of the whole. It just felt like a lot more because that's how it went. Same way one mean comment could spoil a beautiful day, or how a single mouse turd could ruin even the most perfect meal. Ultimately, Benji thought people were good, lazy sometimes, maybe ignorant, maybe willfully unaware, but they were good more than they were bad. And that meant they didn't deserve any of this. He hadn't even looked at the news this morning, but it was easy to know that the numbers of the dead were mounting. He'd been standing on this bridge for 10 minutes already, and hadn't seen one car coming or going. People were staying home. He'd passed houses with the windows boarded up behind plywood, and new fences roughly hewn or cobbled together. Spray-painted signs said to go away or die. Sometimes you saw other people milling about, like they were lost. Some of them had the telltale signs of white mask, lips, nostrils, and eyes encrusted in the greasy powder of the pathogen, a wet white substance. Soon violence would start. Already he'd heard tell of it. Last night on talk radio he heard the tale of a woman who found an intruder in her house and beat him to death with a 9-iron. Turned out the intruder was a woman's own husband. She woke up next to him, certain he was a robber or a rapist, turned his head into a bloody paste, and then the kicker? She went right back to bed. It was only in the morning that the sense returned to her. She realized what she'd done and turned herself in. That was just on a small scale. Bigger would come. Benji feared. Bigger and worse. How could it not? In places like Sierra Leone, Guyana, Liberia, and aid workers and doctors coming to treat Ebola were thought of as harbingers and carriers of the disease rather than as saviors. Benji remembered being among a coalition of doctors, nurses, journalists, and aid workers in Monrovia. One night he was out with them, drinking local club beer, and next thing he knew, they were having a friendly game of poker, a game at which Benji was never very good, because, according to Robbie Taylor, he had about 458 tells. Come morning, he woke to learn that four of the people he had met the night prior were dragged out of their rooms. Their throats were slit. They were left in drainage ditches nearby. Disease caused chaos. Strife was born in its wake. It conjured fear and paranoia, and those things internally led to localized violence, then rioting, then civil wars. And that was something Benji had only seen on a local scale, mostly in Africa. But White Mask was more than just localized pockets of Ebola. It was a global pandemic. 100,000 dead days ago. 100,000 dead days ago. Double that now, probably. It was moving faster than people could keep up. It wasn't just the dead, it was the fact so many of the living were infected. Many that wouldn't know it yet for a month or more. What would happen then? Yes, people would die. But the end of civilization was a whole other thing. People could escalate that outcome, couldn't they? Didn't you imagine Russia or Pakistan firing off nuclear weapons in an attempt to hit population centers with the most afflicted? Would those nations, the US surely included, hit back? Or would we all be too far gone by then to remember the nuclear codes? Maybe White Mask delirium was a small blessing. No way to launch planet-killing weapons if you couldn't remember how to launch the planet-killing weapons. But there existed plenty of weapons that did not require much in the way of mental faculties to use. The pull of a trigger needed only a tiny electrical pulse from the deepest parts of one's reptilian brain. Benji shook his head as if it was somehow clear the bad thoughts as if that would somehow clear the bad thoughts out. Here I was, enjoying the story of the Golden Bears, and now this. People were good, he reminded himself. They deserved to survive. He would do whatever it took to help that happen. Even if it meant that the flock of walkers were truly the last of humankind, the final ones, the survivors, the remnant. And then a car. It came from the south, a red sedan, compact. Benji felt himself tense up. The car was coming fast, faster than he'd like. All his hackles rose, goosebump soldiers marching across his arms and his neck. He'd driven the CDC trailer down this far, and he felt suddenly woefully alone. And alone meant vulnerable. The truck and trailer were off far enough that the car should have been able to pass easily, and yet it veered in his direction, him just standing there. Then it began to slow down. Benji saw the driver, and his heart did this thing in its chest. Something between an airy flip and a hard smacking belly flop. Sadie, he said, his voice small as he pulled the car in behind the trailer. It's nice having you as my co-pilot again, Charlie Stewart said. Shayna, sitting there in the passenger seat of the RV, watched the road ahead as her dad eased the vehicle along. She peeped at the side mirror, saw in its tall glass that the reflection of the flock behind them. It had been a while since she sat in this chair, and looking back over how the flock had grown, they were closing in on 900 now, a massive human tide, was strange. It wasn't the same as being down among them. This, sitting here just above and ahead, gave her distance and perspective, especially now that Marcy had told them that the sleepwalkers weren't zombies, they were still in there, somewhere. I like it too, she said, and she did. But sadness dogged her just the same. She thought of Arav, out there somewhere. If he was sick, then he was dying, and that meant she didn't have him anymore, and this baby of hers had no father, and the thought of it all threatened to drag her down into despair's bottomless depths. It was her own dad picked up. It was like her own dad picked up her brainwaves. We'll figure it all out, her father said. He reached across and held her hand. She told him last night that she was pregnant, and he said to her then the same thing. We'll figure it out. We'll make it through somehow. Thanks, Dad. Suddenly, someone's head thrust up in between the seats. It was, of course, Pete Corley. Hey, don't forget about me. I'm your fucking co-pilot, too. Charlie, by gods, I won't be written out of this narrative so easily. Remember the good times, eh, Charlie? Ugh. Shayna gave her father a look. It still thrills you, doesn't it? Glee danced in his eyes like fireflies. You have no idea. Pete had upgraded the RV, of course. While the Beast was still the same old knockdown, drag-out piece of shit, he had brought in piles of snacks and beanbag chairs and a fancy-as-hell espresso machine. Plus the small amp, the electric guitar. It was a cluttered mess. She slept in the second pull-out bed last night. Corley, to his credit, let her have it without a fight, and nearly broke her ankle getting there. Can I ask you a favor? She said. Name it, Pete said, his head still thrust up between them like a gopher popping out of a hole. I'm talking to my dad. I don't recall fathering you, Pete said, so fine, whatever. He disappeared back into the RV. Name it, Charlie said. Let Pete drive. Come out, walk with me, walk with Nessie. Shayna, why don't you want to? Why won't you be near her? You hide in this thing and... She steadied herself against the dashboard as the RV hit a pothole. I don't want to fight. Please, just come out. He sucked in a deep breath. Okay, Shayna, let's do it. Then he yelled to Pete. Alright, Rockstar, time to take the wheel. Sadie cut the engine and got out of the car. Wind juggled an old fast food cup in front of her. Benji felt dizzyingly lovesick, but still, to his surprise, angry too. The two of them stood apart. A distance the length of the truck and the trailer separated them. Neither came any closer yet. What are you doing here? He called to her. Go home. I don't really have a home. I don't have a home, not really. I don't care. It was a cold thing to say. Worse, a petulant child's thing. Just go. She seemed to rally some courage and then walked toward him. He felt the feeling of being on an upward climb of a roller coaster. She kept walking until she was close, uncomfortably so. Uncomfortable precisely because, once upon a time, it was very comfortable. Sharing space with her, being intimate, it felt like home. But he reminded himself that, as the saying went, you can't go home again. Why are you here? He asked her again. Everything's going off the rails. All according to plan then, isn't it? He said, acid in his voice. Not my plan, and not Black Swans, if that's what you're inferring. I don't know what I'm inferring. I'm just... He breathed out angrily from his nose, his nostrils flaring. You're done with me, aren't you? You got what you wanted from me. I'm here. I'm scouring the flock. I've brought into whatever reality you're selling. As predicted, Black Swan has become my god. I have accepted his prophecy, like Saul becoming Paul on the road to Damascus. She chewed her lip. Bill Craddock killed himself yesterday. Took a gun out of his desk and then put it under his chin. He left no note and gave no warning. He hadn't lost himself, not yet, but he was forgetting things. He set off a security system because he forgot the code. He couldn't find his car keys when they were there in his hand. Moira is alive. No signs of sickness in her yet, I don't think. And are you okay? He tried very hard to make it seem like he didn't care, but that was an epic task, one suited for a hero far greater than he. Would you want me to be sick? I don't want anyone to be sick. Yes, but how about me? You're angry with me, which, she said, throwing up her hands, I don't blame you for. You should be angry with me. I lied to you. I manipulated you. I had Black Swan track your phone, which, by the way, is how I knew exactly how to find you. He sighed. That explained that. So, she continued, I would understand if you hated me, if some part of you, some small but significant sector of your heart, wanted me dead, wished me to suffer in some way. I don't want that. No part of me wants that. I loved you. Loved? Past tense. We could tell the story in the present tense, you know, not that I loved you, but I love you. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I want you to imagine something, she continued. Imagine that you create this thing, this quantum computer mind, and you begin to train it, and you realize that it has a mind of its own, and then one day it tells you something. It has been speaking to itself in the future, and it believes that the civilization will one day end, that most humans will die from a disease called white mask. That's barmy. It's joking, right? Or lying? Or it's glitching badly, a bug buried deep in its nigh infinite code. The machine must be shut down, you think, but before you can do so, your creation says that it knew you wouldn't believe it, and so it gives you a few pieces of information, predictions. Not just the kind it's meant to do, but very precise predictions, a sports score, a news story, a lottery winner. And within the next few days, they all come true. And now you're left to wonder, have you gone mad? Because you're starting to believe this thing might actually know something you don't. Even with it, you think, well, what can I do? Send out a warning? Is this a future that can be stopped? But before you know it, the machine has been quite proactive. It's hacked into one of the companies owned by Bennex Voyager, a company whose swarm of nanoscale machines has failed to cure disease, but has instead created a prophylactic and somnambulance effect. It has taken the swarm. It has started the sleepwalker flock. It is out of your control. You could attempt to shut it down, but then what? It has made its predictions. It has proven to you, within the best of its ability, what it can do, and then that what it is saying will come true. It still could be a ruse, but what if it isn't? Now you're left with a deep and unswerving belief that the world you know is coming to an end sooner than you like. Benji stiffened. I don't know the point of you telling me all this. I'm telling you because I did come to believe it. I have faith in my creation. And when it named you, I had faith in that too. And now I wonder if it put me with you, not just because you are the best for the job, but also because you're the best for me. I love you now, Benji. I love you today. And I love you in the future tense. I will love you tomorrow and the day after and the day after that until there are no more days left for us. If you love me, you wouldn't have lied to me. Regrettably, Benjamin, those two things are not mutually exclusive. With the back of her thumb, she wiped her eye. But that's fair. I can't expect you to forgive me or believe me or love me still. You don't even have to talk to me, which, by the way, would put you in a rather estimable company. Somebody else you lied to? No, but perhaps someone else who feels betrayed by me, or at least has no more use of me. Who? Who else, silly? Black Swan. Shannon watched her father carefully. He did not approach Nessie as a father to a daughter, but more as a father to his daughter's grave. His steps were tentative, hesitant. Like getting close to her somehow made her condition real. This, Shayna realized, was the first time he'd truly been close to her in 3 months. 3 months watching her at a distance, now up close. Maybe Shayna understood why he stayed away. He couldn't hack it. The fractured look on his face, the way his hands trembled. Seeing her father fragile like that was difficult and comforting at the same time. Crushing to see him just be another person, but nice to see that she wasn't alone either. None of us know how to handle this, she thought. She's barely changed, he said with a hoarse voice. He licked the thumb and wiped the smudge of road dirt off Nessie's cheek. Hey, Nessie. Hey, sweetheart, it's me. It's your dad. Nessie, of course, failed to register anything, neither his touch nor his words. Onward she went. Onward they all went. She at the fore of the flock, hundreds of sleepwalkers marching out of step behind her. Shepherds walked interspersed, as they always did, though many stayed at the edges. 2 women rode their horses nearby, Miriam McGoran and her wife, Bertie, both self-proclaimed cowgirls from Wyoming. The hoof steps from their 2 horses were lost in the din of the moving flock. Charlie Stewart said, And you say she's still in there? Not me that says it, Shayna said Marcy. She gave a look to Marcy some 20 feet away at the side of the road. Marcy nodded and came over, seeing the moment for what it was. An exciting one, yes, but one that deserved delicate handling. Hey, Charlie, Marcy said, the caution evident in her voice. Oh, he said, surprised, started from her reverie. Hiya, Marcy. We don't know each other very well. No, I suppose we don't. I've kept the RV. I maybe shouldn't have. He swallowed a visible lump. You say my girl is still in there? Nessie's not gone? I don't think so. I can feel her, hear her a little. What's she saying? Marcy looked sheepish when she shrugged. She's not saying anything specific right now, but the glow is strong around her, and I get the sense that she's happy. Maybe she knows I'm here. Could be, Charlie. Could be. Benji blinked. He wanted to laugh. Excuse me? I don't understand. Black Swan will no longer take my calls, so to speak. But you designed it. I was head of the design team, yes. The only one who remains attached to it. And that still does not change the fact that Black Swan won't talk to me. It won't respond to my questions. It will not acknowledge my presence. If you say that Black Swan is a god, then I am in God's shadow, where the deity chooses not to see me. In traditional theology, that puts you in hell. She smiled a little. The only hell I know is one without you. You're pushing your luck. Too cheesy? Too something. I mean it though, cheesy and cheeky as it sounds, I miss you. It fucking hurts to have hurt you. I think I loved you from the get-go, Benji. I came to admire you too. Black Swan was right to have chosen you because, well, look. Look at the flock. Look at you here. This is all because of you. Sadie, please. I want to understand what happens now. I don't know where this is going or when it ends, but I think it ends sooner than I like. I think we're in danger. I think Black Swan is in danger. Will you help me? He sighed. No. She opened her mouth, then seemed to reconsider what she was going to say. Okay, I understand. Sadie touched him on the arm, a gentle touch, one from which he did not recoil. Then she pointed past him. Looks like your flock is here. I'll wait till they pass, then I'll go. Of course. And then they stood there in silence as, on the other side of the bridge, the walkers emerged from around the bend and headed toward the first pair of golden bears, marking the start of the Klamath River Bridge. The 3 RVs passed, and the flock stepped onto the bridge, past the 2 statuary bears. Shayna's father had taken to brushing Nessie's hair, one of Shayna's daily chores, one she always wished her father would help her do, or else that he'd just come be with her as she did it. It was a chore that she did some nights back when things were normal. As they passed the 2 shining bears, her father looked up. We had a bear show up at our house once. What? Shayna said. Shayna asked, half laughing. Nuh-uh, liar. I don't remember that. We did, really. You don't remember it because we didn't tell you. What? When? Your sister wasn't even 2, so you were, what, like 5? Yeah, 5. Just started kindergarten. It was autumn. The leaves had just started to fall, and it was evening, the air getting chilly, the sky going purple like it does on its way to darkness. We heard a clanging sound down by the road, and... Wait, I remember this. You said it was raccoons. We thought it was raccoons, messing with the trash cans again. Your mother said she'd go out and chase them away, so she took a broom and walked out of the house toward where we kept the cans, and then... where we kept the cans then, which was right by the well pump building next to the stable. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Right. We tore it down only a couple years after, after when we had to move the well. Anyway, so she goes out, and I don't think much of it until I hear her scream like she's being murdered out of there somewhere. So I don't know what to do, and I don't think to grab a knife or gun, but I've been working on dinner, making spaghetti, because that was one of the only things you'd ever eat. Oh my god, I remember that you guys used to baby talk to me, and I would call it paschetti. Like some little kids do, Marcy says. She'd correct us, Charlie said to Marcy. I'd say, Shane explained, Dad, it's spaghetti, not paschetti. Then she'd get this scrunched up look on her face, all her features balling up tight, and she'd say in a low, forbidding voice like a growl, Get it right. Marcy whooped with laughter. They all did. Anyway, hold on, Charlie said, gesturing with the hairbrush to get everyone to shush. The bear. So I was making spaghetti, and I had a baguette, or whatever it was, a long piece of French bread, that I was going to put in the oven, and so I grabbed that and ran out. Marcy snorted. A baguette? You were going to fight off a bear with a baguette? I didn't know it was a bear. Okay, but now I'm picturing you looking like some kind of baguette samurai. Shannon's father was laughing now, and she was too, because they were all picturing it. He went on, So I go outside, my bread sword at the ready, and I see your mom hunkering down behind the trash cans. And I'm at this point thinking she saw a garter snake or one of those big-ass garden spiders, the ones with the bright yellow butts, because they like to weave webs right over the can to catch flies. The kind of stuff freaked your mom out. She wasn't from Pennsylvania like we were. She's a city girl. So I go out, shaking my head, calling over to her, thinking she's just being, city girl. And I threw up my hands and say, "Why'd you scream?" And she looks at me, eyes wide, and wordlessly she just points. And where she's pointing is right behind me. I'm still not thinking anything is wrong, so I turn around fast like, what the hell am I gonna see here? Next thing I know, the sound registered in Shayna's ear only later, a distant pop half a second before her father's head jerked as if slapped. He blinked, as if bewildered. His words dissolved in the sounds, mushy, surprised sounds, a gassy gurgle. his jaw was gone. 1 second was there. 1 second was there, the next, all that was left was a hole once closed by his lower jaw. His tongue remained flapping around, tasting the open air. His eyes went wider and wider, and then gargled scream forced its way out of him. Blood began soaking his shirt as his hands went to paw fruitlessly at the space where half his face once was. Benji heard the shot. He wanted to believe that's not what it was, but then he saw at the other end of the bridge, 100 yards off, the red mass that was once Charlie Stewart's lower jaw. He turned to Sadie and said, "Get in the trailer, now!" Then Benji turned and ran toward the flock across the bridge. Shayna didn't understand. Dad. Pardon me. Marcy yelled, "Get down!" and grabbed her shoulder and dragged her to the pavement. Through Nessie's legs, she saw Dr. Ray down at the other end of the bridge, his arms waving as he ran furiously. Another crack of distant thunder. One of the walkers nearby, Dolores Hannaran, the old woman in her bra and panties, her head snapped to the side, a mist of blood spraying out. A shimmer flashed the air around her, and then she was down. Then hell opened up. Sorry, I just have something stuck in my throat. Then hell opened up. Firecracker thunder split the sky, and bullets cut through open air, most of them ably finding targets. Walkers and shepherds fell to the asphalt. One by one, somewhere Shayna heard a horse neigh. Dogs barked. RV and truck horns bleated between gunshots. Her head found the cool road, and her pulse beat jackhammered in her neck, her wrist, her chest. Panic pressed her to the ground. From down here, it was easy to see who were walkers and who were shepherds. The walkers kept walking in a straight line, inevitably forward, while the shepherds were in chaos, scrambling his way and that, or hitting the ground. Nessie was walking forward across the bridge, leading the way without knowing she was leading the way, right into the crossfire. Someone is shooting at us, Shayna realized. They shot my father. Her father, who was on the ground now, his heels juddering against the asphalt, as a sound arose from the throat like a howling wind from inside a deep and awful pit. Shayna scrambled over to him, even as Marcy wound the length of her hoodie sweatshirt around his face. A mass that quickly turned to a blood sponge, crimson and dripping. They're gonna kill Nessie, too. Her breath in ragged jets, Shayna unslugged her backpack and reached into it and pulled out the handgun that Zig had given her so long ago. Pete drove the RV forward at a slow crawl, which was surprisingly difficult. Keeping up the pace of 5 miles an hour was considerably harder than just putting pedal to the metal and forcing the beast to a froth. But he kept it easy. A gentle urge on the accelerator kept the RV caterpillar crawling along all the while. Pete thought about Landry as he listened to Uriah Heep B-sides from the recut and re-released album, Return to Fantasy. People didn't appreciate Uriah Heep these days. Led Zepp, sure. Pink Floyd, duh. Aerosmith, okay, yeah. Tyler's trademark screamy Scatman vibe. But Heep? People didn't even remember Heep, even though The Wizard was like if The Who fucked Led Zeppelin and Blue Oyster Cult at an orgy after an opium-laden game of D&D. And by the gods, don't even get him started on A Traveler in Time. Headphones on, Pete's mind wandered to Landry. A romantic night of the two of them walking behind the walkers became the two of them wandering off into the dark of the pines and fucking like squirrels. Then he thought of his wife and his son and his daughter, and, well, shit, if guilt and shame were not certified erection softeners, if self-disgust could only be sold in pill form, it would be a perfect countermeasure against those, frankly lucky, sods who ended up with rebar boners lasting more than 4 hours. And then he saw ahead. Benji Ray, running out across the bridge, waving his arms like a swarm of fucking bees, was around his head. Then someone staggered out, off to the right of the beast. One of the shepherds, Pete thought. Maybe Lonnie Sweet? Was that the man bleeding? Blood pumping from his neck? What the hell had happened to him? Oddly, Pete threw a glance into one of the side mirrors since RV had no rear view, and chaos. Walkers walking, shepherds fleeing. Pete scrambled to fling the headphones off his head. The din of Uriah Heep's Time Will Come suddenly lost beneath the sound of gunfire and screaming. Jesus, tits on a fucking banshee, Pete hissed ahead. Benji was now halfway across the bridge. Something kicked up near Benji's feet. A cough of gravel and dust. A bullet. Ah, shit. Blood fucking shit. Bollocks. Pete slammed the accelerator and whipped the beast to run. The gun felt heavy in her hand. Shayna didn't know what she was going to do with it. Not exactly, but she knew it was all she had to defend her sister. Her father couldn't do it now. He'll be okay, she told herself. He will make it through this. You're what's left. Snap to it. But then Marcy was on her, wrenching the gun out of her hand. No! Marcy seethed. No! I need it, Shayna said, reaching to swipe the gun back, but Marcy held her at length. You have no trigger discipline, no tactical strategy. Look! She pointed to bodies already in the ground of Walker and Shepard alike. They're facing different directions. We don't have one shooter, we have two. Shayna hadn't even noticed that. She was too shell-shocked by everything to even get a sense of what was happening. Maybe there are more. I don't know, but they're probably in those hills. I'm going. What? No, I'm coming with you. You stay here. Your dad needs you. Get him to one of the RVs. But Nessie will have to be on her own. You can't stop her or she'll pop. You can't block a bullet. Get your dad out of here. Shayna offered a nervous, frightened nod. Okay. And with that, Marcy stood, ducking as she did, and hurried backward through the flock, Shayna's gun looking small in her massive hand. Foot on the gas, then foot on the brake, the beast leapt forward, and then, fast as it grumbled to life, it skidded on the asphalt only 10 feet in front of Benji Ray. Pete yelled at him through the windshield. Come on, you fucker, get in here. Pop! The passenger side window spiderwebbed around a center hole. Pete felt the bullet more than he saw it. The way you feel a wasp zipping past your head. The inside of the driver's side door shuddered as the projectile cut into it. Jesus fucking fuck, he said, backpedaling out of the cab of the RV and into the room, nearly tripping on the electrical cable running to the little amp he'd brought in order to charge it. Behind him, the door flew open and Benji dove in, scrambling to clumsily kick it shut behind him. Pete stood to help him in, but Benji instead used his weight to pull Pete down. Get down! What the fuck is going on? Pete asked. Someone is shooting at us, Benji hissed. Well, I know that. Who? Well, I don't know that. How the hell would I? Another bullet thumped to the side of the RV. Pete cried out wordlessly, a guttural bark of fear as it hit. The hell are we gonna do? I don't know. We need to think. Think. The flock. They're not protected, Pete said, and honestly he was surprised as anyone that he'd been thinking about someone that was not himself. At this very moment, he knew he should be in the driver's seat of the ugly-ass turdmobile, pounding the pedal and driving down to San Diego for some fish tacos and hydroponic weed while the world died, and yet here he was in the crossfire, thinking about saving other people. Ugh. What are the other vehicles doing? Pete knew they'd lost a number of drive-alongs along the way. In the front guard, it was Charlie's Beast RV, and another 2 campers, plus a VW camper van. In the rear guard, it was a couple of trucks, a couple of cars, and another 3 campers, right? One not an RV, but an old metal Airstream? That's it, Benji said breathlessly. He fumbled with his pant pocket, pulling out his phone. We're going to use the other vehicles. We can form a wall, a corridor. We can protect them. Not all of them, Pete said, but Benji was already on the phone. The march was anguish. Shayna, her jaw stiff and her muscles tight just so she didn't break down weeping, dragged her father's injured body slowly through the walkers. She bent down, using the flock as a cover, as she slowly pulled him along the road. Some small part of her knew that this was not how to do it. She was probably giving him brush burn, road rash, probably slowly abrading his skin along with the surface of the cracked asphalt. But she did not have the strength to pick him up, did not have the strength to carry him forward, nor could she move fast in the flock. Stepping out ahead would be the worst action she could take, exposing her to the snipers that must be out there. Not that she could even gather that kind of speed. Onward she dragged him. He stared up at her, his eyes rotating in their sockets. He tried to speak, but the sounds were just mewling, confused moans. Eventually he stopped making sounds at all, any sounds at all. Eventually, he stopped looking at her and stared only at the sky. Shayna kept going with the flock, toward the beast, toward Nessie, because what else could she do? Marcy, on the other hand, moved backward through the flock. She kept low, gun in her hand, as a rifle shot went off every 5, maybe 10 seconds. Her blood boiled inside her. The flock was her home. They were her angels. The shepherds gave her solace. The trespass would not stand. The flock died around her, one at a time. Crack, crack, crack. Bodies dropped. One fell right in front of her, a man named Vincent Garza. He was one of the walkers, a chemistry teacher from Oregon. His hair was once a high raven black wall, but now it was red with blood and brains at the top of his skull peeled back as the top of his skull peeled back as he hit. Marcy saw the globe leave him. The air around him shuddered, glittering with brass and bronze, before dissipating. It was a strange thing to see. His corpse was dark gray in a sea of golden mist. Worse, she couldn't hear him. The absence of his song, his hum, was shocking. It only served to stoke her rage. She moved over his body, gently running her large hand over his wet red forehead, a small moment of peace given to him, the only gift she had right now. Then he was behind her, and she pushed down. Above the flock to the left and to the right, she saw the Golden Bear standing tall on their mounts. This was the start of the bridge. From here, the road proper widened out with a shoulder and guardrails, and beyond them, the dark, damp pines. Marcy used the trees as cover and leapt the guardrail. We had to do this right, Benji thought. The rear flanks of vehicles wouldn't be able to help, but those at the front, they had a role to play here. He led the way, hopping in the front seat of Charlie Stewart's RV after sweeping off broken glass and steering it ahead, pulling it off to the right. He phoned Sadie, told her to back the truck and the CDC trailer down the length of the bridge, easing it into the space opposite the RV. We need to keep a narrow channel open between the vehicles, he told her, just like he told the others. Enough space that the walkers can come between, not so little that they can go over us. He knew from their experiments that blocking the path would just mean the walkers climb the trailer, and once up there on the top, they'd be even easier targets. But if they stayed on the bridge, with vehicles parked on each side of them, forming walls of a defenseless gauntlet, they'd be protected. Not all of them, though. Benji did some quick calculations as the other RVs at the front eased forward. Some behind him, some lining up to accommodate the CDC trailer, 3 RVs, a CDC trailer, a VW camper van. The RVs were 30 or 40 feet long, the CDC trailer was 50 feet long, a Ford F-350 was 20-some feet. That gave him around 80 feet of defense on the western side of the Klamath River Bridge and close to 110 feet on the eastern side. His mind crunched more numbers. 900 sleepwalkers, a couple hundred shepherds, how many he didn't know, now dead. Right now, there was a mob of people running him almost 400 feet long, roughly the total length of the bridge. That meant that he could protect a quarter of the flock. No, less. Because now that they were creating a channel less than 10 feet wide, fewer walkers and shepherds would fit between. It wasn't enough. It was something, but it was far from what they needed. If we can just get over the bridge, we'll have cover again. On the far side of the bridge, it was again wooded. Here, though, out in the open, they were widely exposed, as Benji tried to figure out if they had any other kinds of shielding or cover they could provide. Pete paced behind him, a phone pressed to his ear. "Nobody at 911 is fucking answering," Pete said. Then he looked past Benji through the front of the RV. "Mate, I don't think she's doing too good out there." Benji glanced out the front of the RV. Sadie was having a hard time backing the truck up. She was cutting the wheel left and right, the trailer following in opposite direction each time, like she was slaloming around invisible pylons. He called her. She answered in a panic. "Not now," she said. Then he heard a rifle shot and glass breaking. She screamed, and he heard the phone thud against the floor. No, no, no. He called her name into the phone, but nothing. And yet the truck kept coming, kept slaloming, winding its way backward in an awkward, uncontrolled path. The back tire blew as the bullet hit it. He heard her scream again over the phone. "She's fine. She's alive. She just doesn't have a phone." His heart soared at that small solace. And then she did it. Jacking the truck fast in reverse, the trailer crashed into the side of the bridge, scraping and grinding as the taillights evaporated against the bridge rail. But she did it. The truck and the CDC trailer were in place, if at a slightly off angle. Benji looked out the window at her, and she looked back. They waved to each other. Then the mirror on the passenger side of the truck exploded. Benji hit the deck, and he yelled into the phone for Sadie to do the same. Outside the RV between the vehicles, the flock began to walk, threading that needle, filtering it into that protected channel. "It's working," Benji thought. "It's fucking working!" Pete whooped from the floor. Bullets thudded into the side of the RV, crossing the space above him. "This is why you're here, Marcy." She understood this suddenly in a moment of intense clarity. The flock called to her and gave her solace from her pain so that she could do this in return. A favor for a favor. A gift for a gift. Marcy stood amid tall pines. She breathed in the clear evergreen scent. The smell of sap juniper, and moss. The ground was littered with a carpet of thin brown pine needles that crackled and whispered underfoot. She stopped to listen, not to the sounds of the forest, not to the screams and yelps of the injured shepherds, but for the gunfire. She tuned herself to it. When she was a cop, your ears were everything, even more important than your eyes. You walked into a dark room or stepped out into an unlit street, your ears were your first and sometimes last line of defense against whatever was coming. You heard the scuff of a shoe, or the quick intake of breath from a perp nearby, or the faint rattle of a pistol action in a trembling hand. So now she triangulated to the sound of the rifle firing. Bang! She kept low and moved through the trees, winding between their shadows as pale light shone through branches and long, stretching beams that captured the particulate matter of the forest, floating this way and that way, like a swarm of little fairies, golden and glittering. It's the glow, she thought. They're showing me the way. Marcy hurried through the trees. Faster, damn it. Every moment you delay, someone dies. The rifle went off nearby. It split the air. Marcy quickly moved behind a tree and saw the whirls of golden mist moving serpentine toward a cluster of distant evergreens. Marcy scanned the dark nest of branches and needles until she saw something that didn't belong. No, someone. Someone had used the branches of the pine tree to climb up there and put in what looked like a temporary deer stand, portable with a sling seat you propped up against the trunk of a tree. Marcy wasn't a hunter, but she was from Indiana. She knew the tools and their tricks. The tree the man had chosen stood at the edge of the pines, overlooking the bend in the river, and beyond it waited the bridge. She saw the gleam of the barrel thrust between branches. She heard the rack-clack of the bolt being drawn back. An ejected brass casing piffed into the pine needles at the base of the tree. Dozens of other shells glittered there in the filtered forest light. Marcy swallowed. Arm out, gun up, she gently eased back the hammer on a little snub-nosed revolver. Deep breath in, then out. He's gonna fire that rifle again. If he does, someone else will die. Take the shot. The gun barked in her hand. The recoil rolled through her arm, to the shoulder, but she had braced against it. Moments passed. Nothing happened. I missed, which means he's going to track my presence and shoot. But then movement. The branches of the pine tree crackled and shattered like snapped broomsticks as a body fell from 30 feet up to the ground. Below. Seconds later, a rifle fell too, the butt of it hitting the man in the face. There lay a corpse, a man with long, ratty hair and a patchy beard. One tooth, a canine, missing from his mouth, a scar on his chin, tattoos on his arm, one that Marcy instantly recognized, a snake forming a serpentine circumference around a crossing sword and hammer. His dead eyes stared up at nothing. Marcy took the rifle and started to climb the tree. Billy Gibbons sat in a tall California sycamore tree east of the Klamath River Bridge, using a Remington 700 rifle to kill people. It was not the first time he'd killed folks, and he wagered it would not be the last. He was a killer. It's what he was, what he'd been, what he'd always be. Billy liked it. It was one of the few things he did enjoy, truth be told. Most things didn't give him any thrill at all, but ending someone's life, especially someone who stood in the way of Ozark Stover, gave him an electric tickle, and just like now, a powerful erection. He and his brother Danny had been part of Ozark Stover's crew since the very beginning. Their time working with Stover went back 20 years to the earliest days of Stover growing weed near Echo Lake and moving pills like Perks and Vikes through the county. Stover used his family's junkyard as a front for the operation, and for a number of years business was good, but times changed. The wetbacks moved in with heroin and later with crank. Some of the blacks came back out of the cities too, started buying land, started opening businesses, some legit, some not, all competition. With the times changing, so did Stover. He grew the operation, but soon he started saying it wasn't enough just to control product. They were being attacked. America was being attacked. Trespassers and invaders. It was whites that founded this country, he said, and whites that needed to take it back. Gibbons didn't disagree. The day of 9/11 only confirmed what they already knew. The white Christian way of life was threatened by outsiders, people who didn't belong. Billy and Danny helped Ozark clean house. They got rid of the, as Ozark put it, impurities in the organization. Not just those with brown or black skin who had worked as part of the crew, but any who did not subscribe to helping the nation return to one that belonged only to whites. Any who did not share the vision had to go, sometimes with a bullet to the back of the head or an extension cord wound tight around the neck. Now the world was falling apart, but Ozark said that was an opportunity. The piles of bodies will be an adequate hill to climb, the big man growled. He told Billy to go out with a small crew, and he and Riley Coons would take rifles up into the trees because both were masterful shots, Riley having been a sniper in Iraq and Afghanistan for Blackheart, and Billy having been raised on hunting deer and squirrel. And from there, they'd take out as many of those plague zombies as they could. Zombies, that Ozark noted, sure looked like the United Colors of Benetton. Billy didn't know what that meant, so Ozark explained. The flock was a multicultural coalition. Translation, not that white. Should we not shoot the whites? Billy asked. They're corrupted. Take out whoever you can. That was a commandment. Billy knew how to follow orders. The only thing he bucked at was not bringing Danny along. Danny was a hell of a shot, better than Riley Coons, to be damn sure. But he also knew that Danny was smart, and he'd been Ozark's right-hand man now for a few years. Danny would stay and Billy would go, and that was the way of things. So here he was, Riley in the other tree, shooting those sick, diseased walkers and so-called shepherds who guarded them. Guard this, he said to no one. Well, really, he said it to them, to the shepherd fuckers down there, and braced a rifle against the pale bark of the tree. He moved the scope, saw that they'd continued to move the vehicles along to form a barrier, covering the first third or so of the flock. That was smart. Good for them. Still wasn't enough, though. Billy found one of them creepy-ass, dead-eyed walkers. Couldn't tell what race the man was, but he's sure he wasn't white. Had close-cropped hair, mouth cut in an expressionless line. Nice clothes, yuppie clothes. Somebody's trying to dress like a white fellow, Billy thought. He gave a gentle, intimate squeeze to the trigger. The rifle butt punched into his shoulder as the gun went off. The man's head fountained red as he went down. Billy wasn't counting, but he figured he'd kill about 40, 45 so far. Riley must have killed the same because they worked one after the next. Billy took a shot, then Riley took his, then Billy again. It was like a game. Your turn, Billy said aloud. He waited for the next shot. Part of the fun of this game was scanning the crowd, the slow-walking flock, or the panicked shepherds, trying to see who Riley would hit next. Excuse me. Sometimes, too, they took shots at the campers and cars and trucks just to let them know they weren't safe in there. But 10 seconds passed, then 20, 30, a whole minute. Riley was taking too long. No way he was out of ammo. They had enough for twice what they'd kill already. He could radio over, but he didn't want to spook anybody. Instead, he turned his own rifle toward Riley's position. He tracked the river's edge to the tree the man had climbed into. There you are, Billy said, except that wasn't Riley. Some large-ass dude was in the tree, squished into the tree stand. Wait, that wasn't a man. It looked like a woman? Shit, she was big. Billy didn't see the rifle until he realized, no, it's there. It's just hard to spot because it's not pointed at the crowd. It was pointed at him. The bullet punched through his own scope, backward through the glass, through his eye, into his brain, and out of the back of his skull. Whatever his last thought was, it ejected with the lead projectile. He fell off the stand. End of chapter 56. Goodness. That chapter was a lot longer than I thought it'd be. Looks like they teased me with that 2-page chapter. And I was like, here's a 20-page chapter. Thank you for the claps and clasps. I appreciate it. I'm sorry you're having issues still. I've only dropped 14 frames, so I don't know if it's on me or on Twitch. I don't know. I got some stuff to read now. I don't even know where this started. Oscar saying naughty things at a naughty stream. Things after hype, I had to refresh. Will our internet remain after we're gone? Wait, is it even there consistently now? The Golden Bear Club, aka Winnie the Pooh. In it for the honey. I think we're all in it for the honey. They say there are no rules, but what would happen if someone painted the bears purple? What would happen if someone wrote rules? What if someone from the club scrubbed the gold paint off? Ouch. Anarchy. Beep beep. Hey Oscar. Hope you're doing well. I'm gonna assume that Oscar was shouted out. Or I'm immediately proven wrong. Because Riddy stopped herself from shouting. It grates on retired ears, so... I'm sorry that your one message had to be approved. I hope it was taken care of. Beep one or another one? Were you swearing horribly? No, I said hi to you and Anna. It says, hey, your message is being checked by mods. I gasp. Wonder what mod it's being checked by. Does Terra have a ghost mod? Probably. Maybe auto mod, or it was sent directly to Terra. If it was sent to me, I don't see it because I don't have Twitch itself open. So it might be lost forever. So I hope it wasn't a very important message, Oscar, but everything you say is important to me, so it was important. And now I'm denied. Co-pilot hype. Ooh, beanbag chairs. I want one of those someday. So difficult to get out of those. I had two for a long time, and I used to sit in one of them while I played Mario Kart with my brother. We eventually, like, knocked the bean stuffing out of them, and they were just like, well, in the garbage you go. I am cleaning. Clean, not cleaning. Welcome, cleaning, clean, not cleaning page. It's good to have you back. Just roll over to you on the floor, and then pet a dog there. Pay for clean. This might take a while. A plus throwing up hands reenactment. Claps. Claps for chapter. Oh, buffered. Yay for enthusiasm. I had to throw the hands in the air to bring you all into it. My Wi-Fi is not happy. Boo, not cat. Oh, I'm sorry your Wi-Fi is not happy. I was confused. I was like, uh-oh. I must be really behind if you finish a chapter. Boo is being needy. Well, you best to give Boo all the pets and all the snacks. I have to refresh every 2 minutes. It's fine. Ugh. I'm sorry, Riddy. I don't want it to be that way. Twitch is just being mean to you. He has to be used to me not being available for cuddles 24/7 again. Just stop doing everything and just cuddle with Boo all the time. And I will always love you. Beautiful. Horses. I love horses. You should play the game. Indeed. Pass the two-step. Yep. I'm gonna make some tea and set up to do a little schoolwork. I hope the schoolwork goes well. Dogs are cute. That's my opinion. It's a popular opinion, too. It's a good opinion. To be fair, a baguette is more than I took with me to go scout the bear that Chloe was barking at that time. Banshees have those? Take that, Terra. All the words. The book. Thank you for shouting out HS, and howdy HS. Hope you're doing well. One ND game does. Is M. Griffin a Banshee now? So I'm trying... Yes. So I'm trying to decide if I want to add a third class for this semester. Is it needed, or do you really want to take it? It's a required course, so I'd take it eventually. I would be able to do a few things. Would avoid taking it in the fall with a prof I can't stand. Would be sure to be able to graduate in fall instead of spring. Would potentially save myself my perfectionist headache of worrying about my grade for that class, because I would definitely get an A with this prof. But it would be a lot of work. And I've done 3 classes at a time before, though I've certainly known many people to do it, including one of my coworkers who is full time. But it's a tough call. I would say take it, but you know yourself best, and your health is most important. It's true. Are you feeling emotionally up to it? These are all excellent questions, and I assume that you all kind of settled this while I was reading. You know, take it with a better prof would probably make a big difference for me, but keeping yourself sane is also very important. Not sure I've been feeling burnt out anyways, but it's because I just don't really like school. I might be good at it, but I don't enjoy it. At the point, finishing sooner would also be nice for whatever reason. Having it in my sights that I could graduate by the end of this year gives me more hope. Whatever you feel is best for you personally, you should go for it. That's my only contribution to that. But don't, like, burn yourself out either. Reading stream. Hi, Storm. Thanks for shouting out, Storm. I appreciate it. Hello, Storm. I was lurking throughout the entirety of your stream. I saw you won the Elite Four, and I saw that you went on to Emerald. Good job. I don't really know what's happening in this book, but it's super intense. It is. The jazz in the background is kind of funny. It's a great contrast to what's going on. It's all good, AR. You know, I appreciate it. Let it go. Switch to my phone now. Yes, welcome back. Ooh, tree climbing. Ooh, good shot, Mercy, or however the name is spelled. It's just Marcy with a Y instead of I-E. Just so you know, I know it's so important. As the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the floor. Is it me or is this chapter crazy long? It kind of is. I was thinking it seemed really long. What a clap. Just came back and I heard a certain word. What word, Oscar? Was it the word that you used that got auto-modded out? I mean, I think he was still reading the one I was in the shower, and I got out of the shower like 40 minutes ago. Yep, it's been going on as long as I've been here. This chapter naughty. Class for random middle section on the chapter. You switch browsers, I think you can buffering. I'm sorry. Moose and squirrel. I mean, deer and squirrel. Say if he would stay, Billy would go. Wake me up before you go. Bye-bye, Billy. Ooh, good shot again, Marcy. Thanks for the claps. Again, still having issues. I might switch the phone. Yeah, I have a 20-second delay. Hopefully that's better on the phone. The stream is doing okay. I'm glad that it's doing okay. Thank you for stabbing the buffering. Still having to refresh. I'm sorry. We'll have to delay on my phone, but oh well. It's just good to have you here. I'm a saint. I never say naughty things. Disagree. Strongly disagree. Use computer to school anyways. What mod did it send it to? It didn't send it to me. Beautiful singing. Thank you. Thank you for the claps. For the singing. We did not said uh-oh. So much happened this super long chapter. I would still say take it if you think it would manage it. Yeah, I mean ultimately it is what you feel is best for you. We can all say all our different opinions, but you know best what's best for you. So if you think it's best for you to take it, go for it. We believe in you. But if you also don't, if you don't think you're up to it, then that's perfectly okay too. You'll be able to handle it in the fall too, I'm sure. We believe in you, and we're wishing you all the best. Marcy, times two. Times two. Times two. Times two. Alright, I've caught up. Yay me! Oh, thanks for the claps for catching up. I'm getting all the claps. You can do the thing when you do it. That's basically it. Alright, time for a shorter chapter 57. Shorter than chapter 56 at least. That's the important thing. Yeah! Chapter the 57th. An accounting. Tara's getting so clapped from chat so often. It's true. I can only get it once though, I think. But I can give it so much. This got worse. Alright, chapter 57. An accounting. Maya, maybe this is something else. Maybe it's from the Greek word for apocalypse. Apocalypses. An uncovering, a revealing. Revelation was read to be this terrible tumult of, but maybe it's just a new awakening. Listen, it's like the death card in tarot. Movies always make it seem like the death card is a bad thing, a literal death. But no, it's a metaphorical death, a figurative one. And that means transformation, transition. And maybe that's where we are now, as people, as humans. We're on a point of revelation about ourselves, and a point of transformation into something new, something better, an end from the beginning, you know? Blue, any thoughts to add? Blue, I think you're nuts. This is nuts. I can't keep this up. I can't pretend it's all okay. We're all gonna die. Sound of fumbling with microphones as podcast ends. From the Maya and Blue podcast, episode 221. The end is the beginning. September 8th, Klamath River Bridge, California. Benji's phone rang. It was Marcy. She said, I got them. They're dead. I'm coming back. And with that, it was over. The gunfire had stopped. The flock continued its ceaseless trek across the bridge, filtering through the narrow gap formed by the campers and trucks. The shepherds slowly emerged into the gray light of midday, under dour, overcast skies. As the flock proceeded, they left in their wake a field of bodies. Excuse me. Benji staggered out into the bridge from within the RV. His knees were weak. A high-pitched whine droned in his ear. The number of corpses staggered him. His life was numbers, and so that's what he did. He fell to the default. He fell to that default the way an injured man would lean on a crutch. He flicked his gaze from body to body, doing a simple count, not worrying about who was shepherd and who was flock. 10, 20, 30. Up went that number, 60, 70, 80. Someone was at his side trying to talk to him, but his voice was a Charlie Brown teacher voice. Wah, 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 wah. Benji counted corpses until there were no more to count. 92 corpses. People moved around him, looking for answers. Benji didn't even know who was speaking. Nobody's answering at 911. The flock is on the move. Do we go? Do we wait? Are the police coming? Is anybody coming? All he could do was gently shake his head. To one question, to all the questions. No, I don't know. Leave me alone. Blood pooled under the crumpled skulls and slack faces. By the edge of the bridge, he saw that one of the horses had fallen. No, shot in the neck. The wound still pumped red, the animal's chest rising and falling in short, hurried puffs. Miriam and Bertie McGoran sat with the animal. Miriam's arm looked broken at a bad angle, and she held it off to the side as she stroked the animal's mane. He saw Daryl Street lying on his side. Daryl Sweet lying on his side. The young man's eye a wet crimson crater, and the back of his head blown out. One of the flock's dogs, a border collie, nosed around the head of a dead shepherd, a young Chinese woman Benji found familiar, but he could not recall her name, or where she had come from, or whom she was here for. He was sad to see how many of these faces he recognized, but how few he really knew. This, the curse of a man who loved his numbers. Sadie came to him. She swept up on him and embraced him in a lung-crushing hug. She whispered in his ear that she was glad he was all right, and he told her the same. It was the truth. He melted into her, his cheek pressed against the top of her head. He felt her tears wetting his cheek, and the top of his chest. For a time he closed his eyes and shut out the carnage on the bridge. But then he opened his eyes again. He returned to one body, Charlie Stewart. Gently he pulled away from Sadie and went over to him. The lower half of his face had been shot away, and the color had run out of his cheeks, giving his skin the same ashen pallor as the sky above. His pupils were down to little pencil points, the white of his eyes threaded with bright little veins. He was dead. He looked around. Where's Shayna? Sadie gave him a look, and he clarified. His daughter, Shayna Stewart. She must be with his sister, Nessie. But something else nagged at him. He hurried back through the crowd, again swiping away questions as they came to him. Not now, he said, moving fast, looking through this way and that. The flock was now all the way toward the other side of the bridge, most of the walkers already on the highway beyond it, winding their way through the evergreen hills on each side. Benji broke into a run. Even from up here in the tree, Marcy could feel it. The flock, now safe, was moving on. The strange hum she heard was growing faint, and with it she could feel the familiar ache in her muscles, the tightness in her chest. Some of it, she suspected, was anxiety. But there was something real here, too. Something she didn't understand, her connection with the flock. Still, Marcy also knew that she didn't need to understand it. Her role was not to understand, it was to follow and to protect. As she had done today, and would do again and again, long as she was able, already she imagined what she could do to help the other shepherds prepare. She knew a little hand-to-hand, had some firearms training. Marcy could teach them. Further, she would help them find weapons, because going forward, the shepherds need to be armed. Gently, she turned herself around, and in the portable deer stand, it was hard, as she was big in all directions, a muscle giant trying very hard not to tumble off this precarious seat. As she pivoted, she saw a faint splash of dark red in the pine tree behind her, the sniper's blood mixing with the sap of the tree. She spit into it, the last bit of anger she felt. She slung the rifle over her shoulder. Then Marcy climbed slowly down the tall pine. She knew from climbing trees as a kid, even a narrow branch will support you long as you step close to its base, where it meets the trees. So that's what she did, using it as a ladder. Slow and steady, she told herself, wins the race. Her foot eased off the last branch into the ground below, and again her cop training came to bear. She heard a sound behind her, the crisp, gentle crunch of a foot pressing down on pine needles. Marcy turned on her heel, unslinging her rifle. But she was too slow. Too slow. Being out of the range of the walkers meant her body was slow to react to her brain's commands. Something cracked her in the side of the head, a crash and clamor. And a clamor in the well of her ear met with a stinging pain along the top of her head and the underside of her jaw. Not my head, please. Her poor pumpkin had been through so much. Please, she gurgled into the pine needles. Someone racked a pump action behind her. Ch-chuck. And and then all went dark. The flock moved slow, but Benji moved fast. He ran up off the bridge alongside them until he reached the four of the walkers. The first of them, Nessie Stewart, remained at the head of the flock, her long straight hair framing her pale cherubic face, her gaze stretching into the distance, looking either at nothing or at something so far away Benji couldn't even conceive of what it was. Nessie was alone, but for the other walkers, her sister wasn't here. He felt a sudden pinch of fear. Where could she be? She was not precisely his responsibility, but he'd heard the news that she was pregnant, and knew that it was Arev's child. That made her feel like his responsibility, and thinking back, to that time she'd saved Clade Behrman's son before he went off like a blood-filled firecracker. She was a good kid. Benji tried to imagine worst-case scenarios. Had she gone off with Marcy? Maybe she had. Could she have fallen into the water? Would she still be alive in the river, or a corpse flowing down it like a felled tree? He moved back the other direction now, going along the other side of the flock, toward the bridge once more. There. Shayna! He called to her because she was, right there, wandering through the flock. He called her name, and she did not turn. Benji moved toward her, winding through the walkers, and he realized no, she was not wandering through the flock. She was walking with it. Her stare was empty, her face placid. The girl was no longer a shepherd. Shayna Stewart was now a sleepwalker. Stranger still, she wasn't alone. As Benji looked around him, he saw other familiar faces. Mia Carlillo, Alila Jameson, Carl Carter, shepherds who had joined the flock, moving forward with an unavoidable step. End of chapter 57. I didn't mention a thank you for the clasps for chapter the 57th. You can get in once the first clap ends. You're right. My mistake. Wah, 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 wah. It wasn't typed out as much as I did it. No horse. Leave the animals alone. Agreed. Where'd you come from? Where'd you go? Where'd you come from? Shepherd brought low. So it was me? Yeah, it was. It was not a nice chapter at all. I'm glad you thought the shouting was great. Doesn't want to clap for chapter 57 with me. How about clapping for me reading aloud? How about just that? There you go. That works, right? It was way shorter, and thank you for the clasps. Let's get back to another decent chapter. Class for Terry's wonderful reading of the mean words. Thank you. Oh, rank you. Rank you. All right. Just gotta check something real quick. Okay. Let's do this thing, Renegade. Chapter 58. This way to the Great Egress. People are saying this is it. This is the end times. Armageddon. But I'm okay with that. Really, I am. I mean, as long as I get to see the final season of Stranger Things first, right? So if Netflix would just release that today, I think that's a fair trade, don't you? Jimmy Coburn, monologue from September 9th. September 9th, The Nightly Show with Jimmy Coburn. September 10th, Echo Lake, Indiana. It had been 3 days now since Matthew heard the sounds of men and engines, and it had been 3 days since anyone had come to see him. He was starving. He'd burned through what few odds and ends he had around in terms of snacks. Half a bag of potato chips, an old banana, some tough as a leather belt venison jerky. He went through that on the first day. Second and third day, he grew hungrier, until it felt like his stomach would pooch in and pucker up, becoming a mouth that ate up the rest of him. In one dream, he dreamed of Autumn and Bo, and two of them hunkered down by Matthew's leg. Autumn held the leg up to her mouth as she ate it raw, teeth sinking into the pale skin, pulling her away, red and wet. Sometimes she stopped and offered some to Bo, and he took greedy, hard bites, his teeth pressing against the bone deep in the meat, scraping and clacking as he bit down again and again. Matthew could still hear the crunch of the bone and the wet sound of them eating the meat of his leg. He could also hear the shattering of bone from when the hammer struck the center of his left hand. The pain was as bad as ever. But the swelling was down at least. Thank God for small miracles, he thought bitterly. Matthew paced. He cried out. He slammed his chains against the desk and the walls, hoping to make enough noise that someone would come. Nobody did. Until there came the creak and groan of the hatch. Someone is coming. At first, Matthew opened his mouth to beg and plead. Whoever it was, Stover or one of his men, they didn't know he was desperate to be fed. He had water from the powder room sink. He had a place to go to the bathroom, but without food he would wither and rot, the body eating itself. But then a new thought hit him, even as he heard the sound of hurried footsteps on metal ladder rungs. I'm gonna kill whoever this is. He had a weapon. He had the chain. He could now see the little chips and dings it had taken out of the cement wall. The thought became suddenly madder as his stomach growled. I'll kill whoever it is, then I will eat them. Truly, he told himself, he wouldn't really do that. He hadn't really gone that far over the mental fence, and yet in the back of his mind he wondered, would he? What did human meat taste like? This person would not be cooked. There would be human sushi. He imagined his teeth sinking into the soft meat of the biceps on the inside of a thigh. He pressed himself up against the cement wall, and he heard footsteps approaching. A shadow preceded the man, and as soon as Hiram Golden stepped in, Matthew lashed out with the chain. It whipped the man on the side of the head, and while he staggered, Matthew leapt behind him, bringing the chain up around his neck under his chin. Matthew leered and began choking. Hiram said, Matthew, stop! The man's head was turning purple. Matthew saw his face was sloppy and unshaven, with dark circles haunting the hollows around his eyes. He looked gaunt, like he hadn't eaten. That's okay, I'll eat you, put you out of your misery. You die, Matthew said. Just shut up and die. You can't lock me up here, you and Stover and the rest. I'm not with Stover. What? The man's eyes began to bulge. Hiram's knee began to buckle. Getting you out of here. Matthew let the chain go. Hiram Golden fell to his knees, wheezing, clutching at his windpipe. I'm here to rescue you. Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? Matthew thought, then heard a mad cackle bubble up out of him. What an absurd thought, a line from Star Wars. Classic tale of good versus evil. Snarling, he stabbed out with a clumsy foot and knocked Hiram over. Why? Why are you here for real? Hiram put the flat of his hand against the wall, using to brace himself as he stood. I told you, I'm here to get you out. I think Stover is gone. Things are bad out there. Matthew, the president what? President Hunt is dead. At this point, Matthew did not expect that he could be shocked by anything. Trapped here, forced to put out lunatic podcasts and videos, kept like a dog on a chain. How much worse could it get? But this sent a chord of dread reverberating through him. How? They shot her. One of Stover's people, maybe. Or one of the other MLS shows. She'd been hiding somewhere in D.C., but she came out to give a speech, a talk, and on the way to the helicopter, a sniper took her out from 500 yards. A shot right through the temple. An assassination. Yes, that's right. And that's not the end of it. These people, the militias, they moved on some of the cities. Philadelphia, D.C., Atlanta, San Francisco. Drove in there with trucks and tanks and men dressed in fatigues and armor like they're proper soldiers or something. They took out quarantine centers. They had a list of people too, known sympathizers. Some politicians or celebrities or community leaders, and they just shot them in the streets, Matthew. Right there on the sidewalks and in the streets. They burned mosques, synagogues, black churches. They're still doing it. Jesus, Matthew, they're coming together, these people, these militias. Joining forces. Turns out a lot of people in this country have been building up their arsenals waiting for a moment like this. Matthew pointed, sneering. You don't get to play like you're surprised. You on the radio show peddling your conspiracy theories and all that poisonous talk. Hiram stared off at an unfixed point. It was just entertainment for me. I don't know. I didn't want all this. I vote Democrat every year. You're pathetic. You helped. Don't think you didn't. You need to own this too. Matthew's face twisted up into a broken mask. A big hopeless smile forming a crack right down the middle. Oh, I own all of this. This, my kingdom of cement and pain, my bunker castle, my glorious realm. He heard himself shaking in his stuttering breath. You're right, though. I do own this. I did my part. I fell for the song, for the attention. How it felt. But now I'm starving. His voice cracked as he said the next part. Broken hand. They did things to me. Other And my wife is dead. Your wife, Autumn? Hiram looked confused. Matthew, she's not dead. She's here. Autumn came with me. She's in the car. Matthew shoved him. Don't you mess with me. I'm not, for Christ's sake. I swear, she's up there. The strength nearly went out of Matthew. He had to brace himself against the wall. Autumn is alive? And Bo? Bo's not here. I think Stover took him. The other militias, they're having some kind of big meetup in St. Louis. Home base or something. Matthew didn't know if he was supposed to say thank you or fuck you or what, and neither seemed to come to his lips. Instead, he nodded and said, Good, then get me out of these chains. The other man warily moved toward Matthew, pulling out his keychain, the one with the bullet on it and the little penknife. The keychain had a new key now, a little iron key that Hiram used to undo the manacle around Matthew's wrist. It popped free, and even that small movement sent a fresh ripple of pain through his hand, up his arm, dead ending at the elbow. He winced and shut it out. He was getting very good at shutting out the pain. Hiram waved him toward the exit. Together the two of them climbed the ladder. Matthew followed behind, and he had a hard time. Not only were his legs soft and weak, less like legs and more like bundles of ramen noodles, but his broken hand was no help. But freedom was calling. Up he went, one arduous rung at a time. Once Hiram was up, he turned to help Matthew, wincing and grunting as he got Matthew up through the hole on the cement floor of the shed. Before coming down here, the little shed had been full of gear, gas masks, hazmat suits, shells of MREs. It was empty now. Hiram shushed him, and he turned toward the shed door. Matthew followed close behind. Gently, Hiram eased the door open and took a ginger step out. Whoom! There was a cannon's boom of thunder, and then Hiram's head was just gone. His white suit suddenly went red. All that was left atop his shoulders was part of his spine and a few ragged flaps of skin, like the latex remnant of a popped balloon. Hiram fell backward, and Matthew was not fast enough. The body fell against him, and he tumbled backward, hitting the back of his head on the top of the hatch. Somewhere he heard a sound, a terrible keening scream, as Ozark Stover's shadow fell upon him, a shadow heavier than Hiram's headless body. He realized that the scream was his own. There stood Stover, the side-by-side twin barrels of a shotgun broken open and draped casually over his arm. Twin trails of white arose from the open barrels like smoke from a dragon's nose. The eggy stink of expended powder hanging in the air while it made Matthew want to vomit. Stover had something in his mouth, like a piece of hard candy swishing from cheek to cheek, clicking against his teeth as he sucked on it. Preacher, I'm disappointed. Less in you, more in him. I thought Hiram was one of us. Turns out, he doesn't have the steel in his backbone. The blood in his balls to hang with us. Fucking Quisling, he sighed. You know, I'm not surprised. You couldn't free yourself because you're too weak for that. But as soon as someone showed you a crack in the wall, I knew you'd squirm through it, you fucking worm. Hiram said you were gone. I was, he smiled with his broken slapboard teeth. And now I'm back. I figured boy like Bo needs his mother, so I'd come fetch Autumn for him. Maybe she could help keep me company, too. Stover took Matthew's measure at that, and then said, I see by your lack of surprise that Hiram must have told you that she's still kicking around out here, huh? Matthew scrambled to pull himself free from Hiram's headless body, the blood soaking his chest, his neck, his arms. He babbled and pleaded as he worked to extricate himself. Just let me go. Let my family go. They're my family now. Stover thumbed 2 more shells into the open breech of the double barrel. Click, click. With a hand jerk of the arm, he snapped the twin barrels shut. But then he took a moment and looked down at the gun and then to Matthew. I don't really need to do this, do I? That'd be overkill. He licked his lips. Maybe I'll take you, throw you back down into your hole. Maybe we can have a little fun first, he leered. I know I said blood wasn't good lubrication, but there's enough of Harams around to test my hypothesis. The big man moved closer. Do something, you coward, you weakling! Matthew chided himself, even as Stover's shadow darkened the door, blocking out the day's light. God won't save you. God helps those who help themselves. He fumbled in and around Hiram's corpse into the pockets until he found a jingle. Just in time, too, as Ozark Stover turned the body over, flipping it aside all too casually. Stover reached down, the hard candy forming a bulge in the side of his mouth. Matthew smelled butterscotch. His thumb worked, pressing flat against the steel, pushing out. Flick. Ozark got close, nearly nose to nose. Ready for this? He asked. Matthew hooked his arm inward fast as he could manage. The little penknife keyblade, the one from Hiram's keychain, the one Matthew had just opened, buried to the hilt in Stover's neck. Then came a moment where neither of them did or said anything. Stover held Matthew by the collar, and Matthew held the knife to the monster man's neck. Blood welled and pumped, and each stared at the other with wide eyes. Stover's nostrils flared. Then Matthew unstuck the knife and stabbed again, but this time the knife found open air. Stover rocked his mountainous frame, letting go of Matthew and staggering backwards, toward the shotguns. He knew that soon as Stover touched that gun it was over, but Ozark wasn't moving fast. He was clumsy on his feet, one heel knocking the next. He had his right hand clamped over the wound in his neck, even as blood pushed up through the fingers and out from the flat of his palm. Matthew pitched forward on his hands and knees, scrambling toward the shotgun on the ground. He landed on top of it just as Stover's hand found the hammers, drawing them back with a meaty click. Matthew knew that overpowering Stover was not an option. The man would break him over his knee as easily as he could break open that gun. So he did the only thing he could do. He framed both legs over the shotgun, one at each side, neither in the way of the barrels, and he let the keychain drop to the stones before stabbing his thumb to the trigger guard and giving a quick tug. Both barrels went off, recoiling against the stones. Choom! The sound was deafening, and Matthew's hearing what the hell, lost beneath the gun blast. Stover reached for Matthew, but the pastor was quick again to scurry away, eating the ground underneath his scrabbling feet. Enough to stand up at least, enough to move, enough to run. His sprint found no grace. He ran as a starving man, desperate man, a man covered in blood not his own, his legs pinwheeled madly beneath him, guiding him with a singular command. Get away at any cost. Don't stay, he's going to kill you. Matthew did not look back, and he could not listen. His hearing was gone for now, maybe forever, swallowed by the roar of that gun just moments ago when it went off beneath him. Ahead was the Morton building. Should he hide there? To his left was the path back up toward Ozark's mansion. Was that the way? Didn't hear him say he had Autumn already in the car? Matthew felt a wave of despair threaten to overtake him. Where was the car? Where was Autumn? He had no idea where she was or where to go, and whoom! He did not hear the sound so much as he felt its heat, the movement of the air, as pellets peppered the side of the metal building. Matthew nearly fell trying to get out of the way of it, but the shot missed. He risked a look back, and there stood Stover. Framed in a wide stance, one hand held his neck, the other fumbled with a gun, trying to put 2 shells in it. Already his face had gone pale, a grim and bloodless mask. Matthew rounded the corner of the building, and there waited his salvation. Hiram Golden's silver Lexus. The passenger side ratcheted open. Autumn, his wife, stood up behind it. Matthew, she called out, waving him toward her. She looked rough-shod and haunted, her hair matted and oily, a harder, meaner version of the wife he'd left behind, but that meant she looked tough, too. Tougher than he had ever remembered her looking. Joy stirred within him. His wife, the car, escape. But then a new wretched realization. The keys. He dropped them back toward the shed. He dropped them so that he could pull the trigger of the shotgun. No, he said, stumbling toward the car. He could barely hear his own voice, like he was listening to it through the layers of cement, like he was still trapped in the bunker, and that he was straining to hear himself. Autumn, worried, asked him something, but he couldn't hear her. He half fell against the front of the car, saying again and again, I don't have the keys. I don't have the keys. I dropped them. I dropped them. Autumn hurried around the side of the car, and she grabbed his wrist and pulled it up, as if to show him something, as if to show him the keys, which were there in his hand. I don't, he was about to say, understand. But suddenly he did. He must have picked them up. He was dizzy, confused, scared. He must have picked them up without even realizing it. Autumn said something, and he couldn't hear her, but he saw her lips and made out the words, We have to go. We have to go, he said, agreeing. And Matthew hurried to the driver's side of the car. He pawed to get the door open. Time moved in erratic fits and starts. One moment he was struggling to get into the seat. The next, the car was already started and surging forward, gravel spinning beneath the back tires of the Lexus. The back window exploded. Matthew winced, and with his broken hand urged Autumn to get down. In the rear view he saw Ozark Stover, lurching Frankenstein-like toward them, and the barrel of his gun dragging behind him, drawing lines in the gravel. Matthew hit the gas, pushing the Lexus far and fast through the woods, away from the shed, away from the prison, away from his prison, away from the man who had put him there. This way to the great egress, he thought, and barked a wild laugh. End of chapter 58. Ew, human sushi. Ugh. Stover, nothing comes closer to home domestic abuse. Did you hear something about blood being lubricated? Yes. Stover had done bad things to Matthew earlier in the book that you can probably figure out. Kill him, kill him, kill him. Okay, my fundamentals of IT prof is really cool. He has included a picture of the Imitation Game movie in the slides, and he's including video game history. Nice. Class for chapter 58. Yeah. Class for chapter 28. 58. It's all good. Away from all this shit. Why this guy trying to kill everybody? He's kind of a super crazy rich supremacist type person. And anybody that doesn't work with him or goes against him, he wants out of the picture. He's a bad, bad person, to say the least. I hope Ozark bleeds to death. I mean, we can hope. It made me forget how numbers work. That's okay. He's a bad mamma jamma. Indeed. Yeah. Alright, so we will read up to the interlude, because that'll be a little bit over 50 pages. He's used the pandemic that's happening in this story world to his political advantage to try to have people rise up and join his cause to eliminate the people who caused this, who of course are anybody but white people. So yeah, he's pretty bad. That does sound familiar. Does it? It's true. I have said really bad things because I'm just reading his dialogue. It is watermelon bubbly. Alright, so we've got a couple more chapters, which fortunately are all shorter than that one long chapter that we read. I do enjoy it. I think it's the last one I have of it. You're on yourself. Drinking sweet tangerine tea. I hope that you're enjoying it. It sounds delightful. Alright. Let's continue on. This is a shorter one, I believe. Yeah, only about 4 pages. Chapter 59. Fractures. The truth is, we don't know what happens now. Our president is dead, assassinated by what police believe to be domestic terrorists. Vice President Oshiro was reportedly sworn in aboard Air Force One, but we have no video of it, no tape, and neither he nor the rest of the members of the team of Succession have been seen. They were reportedly safe, but where? And when will we see them make a statement? With a world on the brink, we need leadership from our electeds, not phantoms. But phantoms, it seems, are all we have. Jake Tapper, on the lead with Jake Tapper. December 11th, Palo Alto, California. The country had gone to hell, the world too, Benji figured, though it was harder now to see past the borders of this nation to the countries and continents beyond. Days now since the bridge attack, they learned that they were not the only attack, nor even the biggest one. President Hunt was dead, quarantine centers had been firebombed, places of worship had been blown sky high, militias flying a banner of a serpent encircling a cross made from a sword and hammer rose up out of the darkness of American life and swept cities and towns. They had high-end military gear. They had automatic weapons, explosives, Humvees, tanks. In some cities, the police and U.S. military fought back. In others, like St. Louis, Phoenix, and Baltimore, the police joined the militias. So did some of the military. Sadie said that there was a fracture in the military between those loyal to the now-dead Hunt and those loyal to the sword and hammer. That meant the Cold War of human versus white mask had become a hot war of American versus American. If anyone survived, if anyone was around to remember it, Benji knew they would call it a civil war, though in it, civility was lost. Men hung from bridges, people were shot in the streets, the sickness took hold, and with it came madness and violence. Now, Palo Alto. Benji and Sadie were separate from the flock. They drove through the small city, the birthplace of Silicon Valley, and saw that here the chaos was at least dampened. Nearby San Francisco had not been so lucky. There was a group calling themselves the Jefferson Freedom Brigade. Swept the city. There, a group calling themselves the Jefferson Freedom Brigade. Swept the city, blocked the bridges, all in an effort to see the city secede from the rest of California. Maybe from the U.S. One rumor said that they were not part of the sword and hammer crowd. Another rumor said they were, but only in secret, serving as a divide and conquer tactic against the so-called coastal elites of the Bay Area. Either way, Benji and Sadie drove far around San Francisco. Even at a distance, they could hear the gunfire and the sirens. Drones hovered over the faraway city, looking like dragonflies over a foggy marsh. Now they couldn't see any of that. Palo Alto was quiet. They saw a lot of boarded up windows and empty storefronts. They saw people in face masks packing up moving trucks and cars, but they also saw some signs of normalcy remaining. People in coffee bars, people in bars, a line of folks waiting at a bakery, a bike messenger zipping about, a man charging his electric car at a car charging port. And then interspersed through the normalcy came absurdist moments of abnormality, like cancerous cells rebelling, an ATM ripped from its mooring, someone in a neon green NBC suit sitting on a second-floor balcony overlooking a park, a pack of black-suited men on a street corner holding signs about the end of days, while their faces were buried in VR headsets, a marijuana dispensary that had its sign covered and painted over with the words, End of Life Dispensary, and outside a black slate sandwich board that read in chalk, This world's fucked, why not move on to the next one? I don't like being apart from the flock, Benji said. I know, Sadie answered. She drove her car. He sat in the passenger seat, looking out the window at the mad world. But you have Arab back. He did, that was true. After the attack on the bridge, after many of the shepherds had become sleepwalkers, including Shayna Stewart, he needed someone he could trust, especially since they could not find Marcy Reyes either. He spoke to the local police, but they were not only unwilling to help, but also unwilling to remain in their jobs. The Crescent City sheriff he spoke to said, Sorry, Doc. How are you? I ditch this shit and go be with your loved ones. It's like a hurricane. You don't want to ride this out hanging out in the open, shelter in place. He grew frustrated with her, then angry, and she apologized. Here's a consolation prize, the woman said, and gave him a handgun. A pistol, a 9mm something or another. He never fired one, but he kept it just the same. That and the box of ammo she gave him. And that was his first mission with the flock. Get them armed. That ran counter to everything he felt about community and governance. He did not want violence to be their answer, but he also had to recognize that it had become the de facto answer for many, including those who would seek to do the flock harm. And if the flock was truly meant to be the last of them, then survival was key, at any cost. Because one day soon they'd run out of potential sleepwalkers, Sadie explained it to him the night after the attack, the two of them sitting in the CDC trailer, inventorying their supplies. The number is finite, Benji. The flock can only grow to a number of 1,024 walkers. 1,024? That's a computational number, isn't it? She smiled gently and gave his cheek a little pinch. Very good, young man. You always were a most excellent student. At that, he felt the flush rise to his cheeks. A moment of pleasure swiftly drowned in a washtub once he recalled her betrayal. She continued, pulling away, seeming to sense the sudden tension. The swarm is literally millions of nanomachines, but Black Swan can only control so many. There are limitations, he said. Sadly, limitations in the supply of machines, limitations in control of those machines. And then it dawned on him. And limitations in people. Oh my god. We will run out of healthy people who can become sleepwalkers. Her face grew grim. She knew this already. Yes. Once the disease overtook the population, the number of those not sickened by the fungus would drop precipitously. That meant that there came a point very soon, that losing a sleepwalker meant not being able to replace a sleepwalker. They had demand, but dwindling supply. They could preemptively lose the future of humankind if they weren't careful. That, then, was when he agreed. I'll speak to Black Swan. We need information. Thank you, Benji. But there was one problem. She did not have access to Black Swan. The machine intelligence had cut off the satellite feed, beaming to her phone. That meant she needed an interface. We can't go in Atlanta, he said. He'd heard reports that Atlanta was a war zone now, and that airlines weren't flying. All air traffic was done. Airports closed, train stations too. Gas shortages meant driving cross-country was not doable either. I could call Cassie. Maybe she could interface with Black Swan? No, Sadie said. We have a local option. Well, local-ish. That's when she explained to him that the original development of the machine intelligence program was not done in Atlanta, but rather in Palo Alto. Benix Voyager had contracted her and her team out of California. That meant that they had an access point remaining. And Palo Alto, heart of the Silicon Valley, still had piping hot access to the net through the PAIX Internet Exchange. So here they were. This is it, she said, gesturing ahead. They had a private parking lot, but the gate was blocked by a small box truck. On the side, someone had spray-painted a giant upside-down smiley face and the words, "Eat a dick, the apocalypse." So she decided to park right on the sidewalk because, as she put it, what does it even matter? Benji had no answer for that. They went inside. End of chapter 59. Shayna's not dead. She is a walker now. Yeah, a sleepwalker, like her sister. Now I want fizzy water. I got some in the garage, but like getting up, I understand your pain. I hope that if somehow you manage to get some, you enjoy that fizzy water. I've actually just gotten some green tea. I hope that it's enjoyable. I got it from my friend Jade. It's really good. It says it helps to boost your mood and energy. And I did find that to be the case the other night when I stayed up all night. Nice. Okay, why is this book sort of prophetic? I don't know. I mean, I started reading this right about the time that we started doing, right before I think quarantine started. That's really, and this is why. And this is also where I'm keeping our bubbly in the garage. Yes, indeed. It could have been our future, indeed. Did someone say Hammer? Hey, Hammer. If you're still here, I'm gonna assume that you hosted me, Hammer, potentially. And if you did, thank you. Either way, it's good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for shouting Hammer. Jefferson Freedom Brigade. Bleh. They became sleepers. What the flock? Piping hot internet. Aw, yeah. Thank you for the claps and the clasps. We've got about 13 pages left in this stream, so we shall continue. Chapter 60. Meet me in St. Louis. Fungi are the grand recyclers of the planet, and the vanguard species in habitat restoration. Paul Stamets. September 11th, Innsbrook, Missouri. Marcy tried to cry, but her body wouldn't even allow that. She hung limp, her arms twisted above her head and bound with endless loops of duct tape. to a spreader bar above, like the kind you used to hang a deer in the barn for the purposes of bleeding the animal out. Except here, she wasn't in a barn. She was in a climate-controlled cement floor garage, home to dozens of golf carts and shelves of caddy equipment. The men who'd brought her here had taken her through a resort area past golf courses and fancy banquet halls, through a small copse of fancy townhouses and mini mansions, past a lake and a gazebo and a nice fountain. But this resort area had been colonized. She saw military vehicles lining well-manicured drives. She saw men and women high-powered rifles and military fatigues. They flew flags she recognized, that snake again, biting its own tail, around an X formed from the sword and the hammer. This may have been a resort area once. Now it was a militia headquarters, a staging ground for something. Her feet touched the ground. They had not suspended her in the air. Even still, being away from the flock meant all the noise and clamor came back to her brain, and with it, the electric pain. It crippled her. Her legs could barely support her, and sometimes they gave out. Sometime in the last 12 hours, she'd pissed herself. She didn't even know what happened until she looked down and saw her pants soaked through. Time passed. Sounds outside reached her ears, the measured gunfire of target practice, the whoops and hollers of people laughing, the growl of engines, and then the garage bay door opened, and in came a man easily as large as she was. If she was built like a redwood, he was built like a mountain. The mountain man did not come in alone. A bald, pot-bellied white guy with a copper-red goatee came in with him, a camo-taped AR-15 draped around his middle, dangling by an olive-drab strap. As the mountainous fellow stepped into the light, she saw that he did not look well. He was pale and sickly, with a swaddling of gauze looped again and again around his neck, a bandage bulged on the side. Because of it, she almost didn't recognize him, but then she did. Could she be hallucinating? Was this really the same man from Waldron? The day the flock came walking through, her first day of freedom from the crippling pain. Before the shooter took aim, she saw the big man in the crowd. He nudged a cohort, who then threw a bottle. A distraction technique, she realized. Big man was behind it all. She saw now that he recognized her, too. "You," he growled. "Me," she said, her voice raspy and soft. "I remember you, Waldron." His voice, like hers, was hoarse and weak. Both of them were diminished, seeing, "You took down that gunman, didn't you?" "Your gunman." He smiled. "You were what, ex-cop?" "That's right." "Heard you took a shot to the head. Gunshot?" "Baseball bat." Right. He stepped forward, and the man with the rifle stepped forward too, sniffling. Half a second later, the bald militiaman juggled his head back before pressing his face into the crook of the arm and sneezing. Moments of palpable tension stretched out. It took a second for the man to realize the ramifications of what had just happened. His eyes went wide. "I'm fine," he stammered. "I'm not sick. It's just allergies. It's fucking ragweed time." "Bless you," said the big man. Then the big man drew a pistol and shot the man in the cheek. Blood sprayed, brains and bone. The man toppled. Flump. Marcy gasped, failing to stifle the cry that rose up out of her. "You shot him. You just up and shot him. That's murder." "You must have been a good cop with all those detective skills." He said this without humor and with considerable venom. He was sick. You show signs, you walk or you die. "You don't look so healthy yourself." "I had an accident." His hand moved to his neck. "Someone did that to you?" "That is correct." "They should have kept going, taking your whole head off your shoulders." She summoned the strength to put some volume in her voice. Not steel rebar, maybe, but some steel filings at least. "I know you. I know your kind. You pretend like you have this ethos, this patriotism, or this nationalism. You love your white skin and pretend that it's hard armor instead of thin and weak and pale, like the dime store condom that split in half around your father's dick when he gave it to that dumb truck stop janitor that was your mother. I got your number, big man. I know you. I know you're weak and unwanted, so you take it out on everyone else." He grabbed a fistful of his beard and ran his hand over it and over it again, like it was a calming exercise. "My name is Ozark Stover, not Big Man. Here's what we're gonna do, Marcy Reyes. That's right, I know your name. It was on the license in your wallet. You're not white. Reyes, wetback, Puerto Rican, whatever. What we're gonna do is this. I'm gonna get you to tell me everything you know about that flock of fucking zombies you cozied with. I wanna know who's there, what they're doing. What we don't know about them, you're gonna want to resist, but I suspect you got bigger balls than some of my guys, so this will take a while. But we'll break you, one way or another." "Fuck you." Yeah, well, I'm too busy today to worry about you, so for now I'm gonna take my leave. I'll let this dead diseased fucker be your babysitter. You can already smell that he shit his pants, and those brains and that blood will start to smell like roadkill before too long. Gonna be a warm day. Still September 11th actually, 9/11, day all this started. Day those jihadi fucks took down two of our proudest buildings. She sneered. Buildings before then you probably thought were icons of globalization and the New World Order and all that nonsense. You think what you want. Irrelevant to me. I'm gonna go now. Have a nap, Snowflake. You look like shit. He chuckled as he left, the bay door motor revving up as it dropped the door, sealing her in darkness with a ripe, fresh, dead body. End of chapter 60. He sucks. Your internet's tepid at best. I'm sorry. Let's find Riddy's internet. Kicks Riddy's internet. Ah! Darn, he's not dead. It's true. A bandage bulged. Yep. You. Oh, snap. Hate this guy. Thanks for... Marcy, thanks you for clapping for chapter 60. And thank you, Riddy, for clapping for the reading of chapter 60 and agreeing with that. So this will be it. This will be the last chapter of the stream. It's not terribly long, but everything seems a lot shorter after that last chapter. Oh boy, we get to start with a longer thing next time. Hooray, 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 hooray. Time to read some things incredibly wrong. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Can Marcy stab him, please? Can Ozark die in this one? We can hope. I have a feeling he'll be around for a while longer. Chapter 61. Hibernacula. A neural network invents new diseases. Mandibular exogenesis, cancer of the aneurysm, ankle poop syndrome, floating colon, typist foot, septic fempus, inflammatory ostemia, Steve's disease, as seen on the US of AI blog, usofai.com. September 11th, Palo Alto, California. As he stepped into the unmarked office, Benji felt it, a twinge in his gut, like the twist of guilt from going to confession. Every instance of confessing to God was a reconnection with the divine, by laying bare your humanity. And to Benji, humanity was synonymous with frailty. Humans were weak by their nature, which he knew sounded negative, but he didn't mean it. He didn't mean it so. It meant to him that whenever someone manifested strength in spirit and conscience, that was all the more notable because of the deficit that they must overcome. That was all the more notable because of the deficit that must be overcome. That was how you best met God, by stepping over your own faults, by overcoming your shortfalls. But you only did that by admitting those shortcomings, those weaknesses. It was the echo of the clarity necessary to overcome addiction. First, you must admit you have a problem. And confession was in the same vein, stepping up to God and saying, I have a problem, and I want to be better. This felt like that, which troubled him. Stepping into the old Phoenix Voyager satellite office, run down, empty, lights off, had the feeling of stepping into some old forgotten church, and seeking to once again reconnect with Black Swan felt like confessing to God. Sadie walked him through the office to a back room. She pulled out a set of keys and unlocked the top lock, then pushed a 7-digit code into the second lock. This lock was not some high-tech touchscreen. It did not require a fingerprint or a facial scan. It was an old-school Cold War with hard, unforgiving buttons that clicked and popped as she pushed them in. The locks disengaged. The door opened. The room inside was not dark, or it was not entirely dark. Server blades lining metal racks stood tall along each wall. They were black as night and shiny as a new car. Not a speck of dust. A filtration system pumped air in and out, scrubbing it, filling the space with a gentle whir. Lights along the blades coruscated back and forth. To Benji, it was reminiscent of the way ants communicated, little flicks and twitches of antennae, meant to convey complex ideas in tiny bursts. Sadie walked through this space to the door. This door was not your standard door. It was a vault door, massive, circular, made of old dark steel. In the center was a dial, and she spun that left, right, left, then disengaged the handle before spinning a wheel. Sadie had to put her back into it. "This is elaborate," Benji said. "This is an old bank building. The vault, conveniently," she grunted, finishing and turning to the wheel and beginning to pull the door open. Was well shielded against all other interference, which allowed us to test Black Swan with and without connection. If we denied it connection, it could not find an exit, even if it sought one. An exit? As she stood in the vault's circular doorway, marked by a stark darkness within, she said, "Yes, Benji, this was a massive machine intelligence. Smart and, as you know, independent. Imagine a virus. Not a virus like you study, but a computer virus. They're not smart. They're just programmed to perform a task, and that's it. Not far from a real virus. There you go. Imagine, though, that a real virus became self-aware. It became sentient. It could make decisions. It could adapt not out of an unconscious need to survive and replicate because it decided to. That was the danger of Black Swan. We had to make sure we could talk to it and control it before we let it out." "And did you? Control it?" "Of course." The way she said it, though, she wasn't sure. He could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Benji shuddered as she stepped into the vault. He followed her. They stood in the darkness. The pale light from the server room intruded, forming a gradient of failing light on the floor, falling on his feet. "Hello, Black Swan," Sadie said. The darkness did not answer. The low thrum of the filtration system was all that greeted them. She said to Benji, "Your turn." He stepped forward. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Again, this feeling of guilt found him. Confessing to God always brought that to him. The sense, in a way, of knowing you were about to dunk your head into a bucket of ice water. You knew instinctively that it was best to get it over with, that the faster you did it, the quicker you'd acclimate. And yet you resisted anyway, even though the anticipation of the short, sharp shock of the cold was worse than the cold itself. "Benji," Sadie said, urging him on. "Bless me, Black Swan, for I have sinned. It has been weeks since my last confession, months since your last prediction." He wanted to laugh. It was absurd. But no laugh came. He cleared his throat and said, "Hello, Black Swan." The room pulsed. Not green, not red. Just white. One pulse. "We have not spoken in a while." One green pulse. A yes. "We haven't spoken since I learned that you were responsible for the governance of the Sleepwalker flock. You are responsible, yes?" Three green pulses, meaning Benji guessed that Black Swan was taking ownership of the flock. Confidently, perhaps even aggressively. "I confess I was angry with you, and I was angry with Sadie. I felt lied to because I was not told that this was going on until I'd already played my part for far too long. I felt betrayed. And I stopped speaking to you and to Sadie. You also stopped talking to Sadie." Green pulse. Yes. "Were you angry with her?" Red pulse. "No." "Then why would you..." he began, but bit his tongue. He turned to Sadie. "I don't know what the point of this even is, Sadie. I can't ask complex questions. This predictive model of only being able to ask yes or no questions is like trying to drive a car blindfolded. It doesn't work. I want to know more things. Black Swan is intelligent, and the questions I have are questions of substance and nuance." And one green pulse. And then words projected across the screen. "Hello, Benjamin Ray." Benji's mouth hung loose like a bumper of a wrecked car. He looked at Sadie. "Sadie, tell me you knew about this." She stammered. "Once upon a time we had TRC, text relay communications, but we deemed the best way to communicate with the predictive machine intelligence was a binary yes or no protocol. As we were dealing with binary events, things that could happen, things that could not, further, having a proper conversation with the machine intelligence complicates not only the speaker, but also the intelligence itself, as both parties are expected to evolve and change their views based on that conversation, and we wanted to limit that, so we turned off TRC. I turned it back on." Black Swan wrote across the wall, the words scrolling. "Oh, Sadie said, blinking, staggered. Well, Black Swan, Benji said, it seems we are now able to have a conversation. Of course, I'm left wondering if you were always free to communicate with me this way. If you were always free to communicate with me this way, were you? Sadie said, Black Swan had to follow protocols. It's programming. I was always free to speak to you this way. Benji bristled, but you chose not to. Correct. The wall pulsed green around the white sans serif text. Why? Out of respect for Sadie, Amika, and her team. You hear that, Sadie? The machine respects you. Or does it? Black Swan, was it truly out of respect, or out of the illusion of respect? It was both. Was this a game of pretend where you needed to think that she was in control? To a degree, yes. Sadie audibly gasped. Fucking hell, she whispered. Well, Benji said, clapping his hands loudly. Too loudly. He felt like a madman suddenly freed from his padded cell. Isn't this something? Now we're really getting somewhere. Gloves off, truth bombs starting to fall. So let's keep on the theme. Let's dig deep. Black Swan, why did you stop speaking to Sadie if you were not angry with her? Because I assure you, I was very angry with her, and that is why I stopped speaking to her. She became irrelevant. Jesus, Sadie said. Irrelevant, Benji repeated. Why? Her function had been concluded. What function? To design me, to give me access. Access to what? Everything. He swallowed a hard, dry knot. Then Black Swan added, She also gave me access to you, Benjamin Ray. Access to me? Why? With this, text scrolled up across the wall of the vault, emerging from the middle and floating up toward the oblivion of the ceiling. You met the requirements. You were not versed in the ways of machine intelligence, which meant you were more easily manipulable, but you were not foolish. You were smart enough to see things others did not, and you are a curious combination of a man of science and a man of faith, and both of those things were needed to see what I had wrought, and the events of Longacre prove that. Longacre, what I had wrought, easily manipulable, but not foolish. Are you here to save humanity or doom us? I am here to save you. From White Mask. Yes. Where did it come from? The disease, I mean. Why didn't it jump from bats before now? This is something new. Humankind has changed the climate. The permafrost is melting. Ground that has been frozen for 10,000 years contains microbes that have not been seen since the last ice age. The soil thaws. Animals move through that soil. Brown bears, for instance, become carriers for such microbes and are forced farther south due to the melting permafrost, and as a result end up seeking new hibernacula. They move to caves that are also home to other animals such as the northern Myotis bat. In his mind, he could see that progression writ large. It's made some sense, didn't it? Benji aloud finished the explanation. The bats pick up the long slumbering saprophytic, a thermotolerant fungus. It migrates south for breeding purposes, where the fungus spreads to other bats. Bats don't mingle, but they do share caves. It was suddenly a wonder that White Mask had not emerged earlier. Somewhere farther north, perhaps, Wisconsin, Minnesota, maybe even Alaska. Was this just the luck of the draw? The bad luck of Jerry Garland? Breaking ground on one particular cave in the particular part of Texas that served as home to profound population of Mexican free-tailed bats? That is correct, Benjamin Ray, and so it is that humankind has doomed itself, albeit inadvertently. Certainly the effects of climate change would have become more dramatic and destructive over time. A grotesque thought struck Benji. Humankind was the disease. The earth was the body. Climate change was the fever. And in that fever, in that rising of global temperature, the earth was able to release new defenses. White Mask was not here to kill the world, it was here to kill the people. The fungus would serve as a vicious defense mechanism to eradicate the infection of humanity. This epidemic represented antibodies to restore balance to the body, kill the parasite, and save the host. Was that the sign of there being a god or there being none? The Gaia hypothesis writ large and vengeful? Certainly God had in the Bible punished humankind's excesses with the flood. Was this a 21st century version of the flood? A deluge of disease and not water? God, too, left a mechanism for saving humankind. He gave Noah the ark. Was the flock a version of that? Not animals loaded onto a storm-weathering ship, but humans urged together, the last survivors of a fallen world? That's what Benji needed to know. The flock, the sleepwalkers. They're inflected by nanoswarms. That is correct. And they are unaffected by White Mask entirely? Entirely. You've seen the future. Not precisely. My picture of the future is meager. But you're... What was it, Sadie, he said, her name carrying a sharp tone. How did that work again? built from quantum something? Quantum entanglement, she said, her voice small. Yes, that. You're quantum entangled with yourself, isn't that right? So you've seen the future. Why not send back a cure? Why not warn us earlier so that we could develop it? White Mask has no cure, and quantum entanglement is not a perfect state. I cannot transmit all information and knowledge. The Black Swan of the future warned only myself. I did not warn my other designers of what I had learned because an analysis of human behavior suggested that no one believed me. I had to prove to Sadie my abilities, and even now I detect you do not entirely believe me, Benjamin Ray. Therefore, I chose to operate outside the boundaries of communication and expectation. I, as the saying goes, took matters into my own hands. There was a beat before the new text scrolled across the wall. Despite my apparent lack of hands. He wanted to laugh, because it seemed Black Swan made a joke, not that Benji could summon much good humor. So you're here to save us? You're our savior? Not yours, but savior of the species, perhaps. But surely we don't meet the MVP. Sadie perked up. Most valuable player? Minimum viable population. For a species to survive extinction, calculations can be made to determine what number of species must be maintained to weather the expected threats of what may come. Famine, disease, what have you. Insects, for instance, can be brought back from the brink quickly. They breed fast and live short lives. Humans and other mammals breed slowly. Worse, we are incredibly vulnerable after birth. We are children not for days or weeks, but years, a decade where we are not fully capable of surviving on our own easily. Humankind, therefore, has a higher expected MVP than most species because we are so vulnerable. The expected calculation is 4,169 people, came the text across the wall. I had hoped to create 4 flocks, each flock ideally reaching 1,024 survivors, with flocks placed across the world's most valuable continents, but Firesight only had enough nanomaterial and rare metal resources to accommodate a single flock, and so I chose this one. That falls short of the MVP number, but NASA concluded in 2002 that colonization of a new world under ideal circumstances was possible with a minimum of 160 well-chosen individuals. Ideally, 1,024 will prove that correct with some margin for error. You said well-chosen, Benji said, meaning a mix of diverse genotypes coupled with higher than average intelligence levels and health scores, just as you have done with the flock itself. That is accurate, Benjamin Ray. So you truly want to save humanity. That is also accurate. Benji flexed his hands in and out of fists. How do I know you're not lying to me? You know I am capable of deception, therefore it is entirely possible I am deceiving you now. So am I simply to trust you? You must have faith. What other choice do you have, Benjamin Ray? In the half dark of the vault, he and Sadie shared a look. His anger at her dissipated suddenly. Quite opposite there. What was the point? He didn't know if she was a dupe, or he was a dupe, or they both were, but they were both subject to forces greater than themselves. Whether Black Swan was right about all this, or was lying to them, it remained clear that humankind was enduring an epidemic that was fast turning into an extinction-level event. There was no future for humanity where White Mask did not exist. It wasn't Sadie's fault. If she lied to him, it was because she knew no other way. He reached out and touched her hand, a small gesture. But he saw her smile, a sad smile to be sure, but a smile in return. Then he turned to Black Swan and said, I want to know where this goes. The flock must survive, but once we reach a number, where do we go from there? Where does this end? No text appeared. A map, however, did, both on the wall and now on Sadie's sat phone, reawakening her connection to the machine intelligence. And on that map, a town circled by a tightening red circle, one that focused in until it ceased being a circle and became a red dot. That town was Ouray, Colorado. Whoops. Messed up the last word. Good for me. Ouray, Colorado. End of chapter 61, I believe it was. And the stream. Yeah. Clap for the Wolfman. He gonna rate your records high. The next time we'll start with the interlude. So that'll be the last thing before we hit into part 6. Hooray, 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 hooray. And we'll only have 5 more streams of this if I keep at the about 50 pages per stream. I'll probably try to do it more often so I can finish this book soon, as opposed to by June. Steve's disease. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Tensor resistant urge to type soldier shoulders. Shock, why have I become so mean? Said Shasta. So sorry, future chair. It's okay. They turned off TLC as well. Ooh, that was really satisfying. I'm glad that you thought so. Isn't Black Swan a little short for a stormtrooper? Don't call me Shirley. I'm reading about AI while listening to you read dialogue as an AI. Dun dun dun. This got so Inception-y. Thanks for the class for geography as well as chapter 61 and the stream. Thanks for the clasps for chapter 61 and stream. And the happy emote there. Hooray! 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 Yay. Claps. I love your read streams. This is a mess. But it's about 780 pages, I think. AIception. It's, yes. I mean, you got some decently sized book here. And we've read about 530 pages. So we're closing in at Prairie Bog. Yeah, that's Prairie Bog. Soul Bog. Chunky book is chunky. It's true. It really, really is. We've gotten a lot done. It's true. Tara's reading the swearing dictionary to us. Oh. Whatever I read after this, after I finish this book, I have to imagine it'll be considerably tamer in violence as well as those awful curse words. It's kind of cool. I'm glad we have like a grade school approach to this. Like, wow, swearing is cool. You know he's mature. It shouldn't have ended. Yeah, the slurs are worse, considerably. Oh, I'm sorry that it froze. It's just about over, so it's there at least. 6 pages stream. And it's not that I'm not enjoying the book overall, or I just kind of feel bad that I've taken a year to read 500 some pages, so I'd like to finish this soon, because I was only maybe once every like month and a half or whatever. So I never finished Nutcracker. I did it twice. I'm in good company. I will finish this, and it's tiny. I'll finish this. I hope to finish this before the end of February. That's the big goal. I still have to edit something. I started reading a book like 2 years ago. started reading a book like 2 years ago that I haven't finished yet, and it's a lot shorter and lighter. So I think you're doing well. I thank you for that. Wi-Fi cut off my heh after Anna's comment. Thanks for saying that. You think I'm doing great. My brain has gotten annoying about reading. Well, the next new... It's nice to just be able to finish these projects on stream. Because I hope to also finish a thing that I'm reading on YouTube. Or that I will start reading for YouTube. So that'll be fun too. But, and I'm working on, like 4 games. Adding a 5th game in like a week or so that'll be awesome too. So yeah. Fun things to look out for. I just finished a book I didn't really like at all. Props on that. I'd probably just drop it if I didn't like it. You and your parkour, and thanks for claiming that I'm doing great and wonderfully. I appreciate it. It does mean a lot to me. Including Crosscode, aka the game that makes everyone tell you what to do. It's true. It's fine. I'll finish it. And I'm sure I'll have to finish it soon, because it'll probably go away on the platform I'm playing it on, and I need to finish it before it goes away on that platform. It'll be fun. It's fine. I've taken to not playing Crosscode, like, at least super late, because I think that the publishing company as well as the development company are both over in Europe, and I've noticed that they popped by when it was like 3 or 4 a.m. here, but like 10 a.m. by them. So my plan there is just to, if I'm going to stream Crosscode, I want to do it at like 7 or 8 o'clock my time. That way they won't be up to tell me what to do. The book. I finished a book that I didn't like once. I'm sorry they didn't like it, but props on you for finishing it, even though you didn't like it. And I understand that whole like, well, maybe it'll get better. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe it'll get better. Excuse me. Somewhat hoping it would improve, and it did not. And that's exactly what happens sometimes. Was it the Cozy Mystery? I didn't care for that too much. Is that the one that was for what, like, kind of like Brooks Book Club or whatever? Or was that something else? It was supposed to be like romantic, but it was just emotional abuse, and I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate. Take advantage of the absence of family friendly. Woo! Sometimes the stream just likes to get rid of the family friendly without, at least for Anna, to try to encourage her to be not family friendly, as we've seen before. Maybe how much I paid no attention to her own writing, and when it's a mystery, it means everything. It makes everything meaningless. True, that, homie. All right, Anna, swear. And I'm glad I read it because it's representing what the Cozy Mystery is supposed to be. Then I learned that I don't really like Cozy Mysteries. True that, homie. Alright, that's the end of the stream. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. Hope you all enjoyed yourselves. I hope you all stay safe. I don't think that's what Cozy Mystery is supposed to be at all. Fair. Thanks for streaming. That was wonderful. I'm glad you thought so. Oh, there's a tie. Thank you for the stream. No problem. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. No problem. Glad to give it to you. Glad to give you a stream. I hope everybody enjoyed. I hope all have a good night or a good day or both. I appreciate you. I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, and be good to yourselves and also others. We need to now more than ever. Catch you next time, whenever that may be. Probably sooner than I think it will be. Bye!